I just turned around and just got
Totally politically
I don't even have one in my office. My lamp has
oh yeah,
USB.
I just so it takes a while.
I like that.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I do. Here.
Yeah, I don't think, man.
But I don't have a long cord. Okay.
I still 182.
That I can't help you.
Well, what I did, what I was saying, I just saved it. I just attached it to it, so at least it was a lot less than time. But I was doing that. Then I started.
What? I guess I brought it.
It made me so mad. And I know I should have let it go, but I was like, I knew it would be this.
I was so happy I said, shit, we died. And it became that condition that way. I didn't do it. And then, so when I was moving to there, they made me go straight. All I had to get Access Road. Back up my house and around. I was like, this is ridiculous.
That's how I get out. You can't get.
So then I had to come down that street. I finally got an intersection of yeah. So I went through the little orange cones and turned it back
Show all of
around.
his style. You just come and kiss his style.
Yeah. But so then I was like, I'm going to go across. What happened? You know what? Now it's up just it's on. You got to turn it on. Isn't that funny?
We're going to get started. Just wanted to say welcome and thank you for being here today. It's always so exciting to see people that will give up a Saturday morning to come and learn about government stuff. You know, it's kind of boring for some people, but anyway, I appreciate you being here. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get going. Please silence your cell phones so that doesn't interrupt us. Bathrooms, if you need them, are out the door you came in and to the right, just past the George Washington painting. So be sure and check out the George Washington painting. It's a beautiful piece of art and it has a lovely story behind it. We're going to do the agenda today in several segments, so with a different topic each time. We have a few guest speakers today, and we'd like you to just hold your questions, if you would, until the end. Everybody's going to allocate about 5 minutes at the end of their presentation for Q&A. If you have a question that doesn't get answered because we don't have time, or if you didn't get called on or whatever, if you will just email me afterwards, I will refer it to the right person and get your questions answered. We don't want to cut anybody off, but we don't, unlike the hearings in Austin, we don't want to be here until 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. So we will do our best to adjourn close to 12:30. All right, to get things started, Crystal, would you just be ready up here? We always open our meetings with a prayer and pledges to the allegiance. And so our prayer is going to be done by Kathy Stevens, and our pledges are going to be led by Crystal Main. Kathy?
Would you bow with me, please? Father, we come to you, recognizing you as the first law giver, great one. We thank you, Father, for life that you give us through your Son, Jesus. We pray today that you will bless this time, that we will sharpen one another's countenance as iron sharpens iron, that you would season our speech with grace, that we would be as committed to one another's good, the good of this nation and this state, as we are for our own good, that would fulfill your law, loving one another as we love our own selves. So we bless you for the opportunity to be here, to be free to do this, and may you bless the work of our hand today. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Crystal and Kathy. All right, we usually open here with a message from Julie McCarty, our CEO, but she is not able to be with us today, so I'm going to be taking the place of several people today, so I hope you don't get bored with me. But just wanted to ask a quick question. How many of you have attended a True Texas Project anything before? Oh, most of you. Good. The first time we did this class this year, we asked that question. There were about 100 people in the room, and hardly anybody raised their hand. And Julie said, how did you all know about this class? And they all went, Facebook. So if you've abandoned Facebook, you might want to rethink that decision. That's still where things are happening. So again, raise your hand if you have not encountered True Texas Project before this class. All right, so there's still quite a few of you. So we are just a conservative grassroots organization. Our mission is to educate and motivate citizens to engage in government at every level. That's where we always place our focus, and thus we have this class today. This is the third time this year we have offered this. We've sold it out every single time at 100 capacity. So that's just encouraging and exciting, and I'm so glad that y'all are here today to share in this. I hope you take what you learned today and put it into action, because that's truly what it's all about. I have been spending a lot of time in Austin in the last few weeks, and I'm talking to a lot of people who are in positions to know, who are telling me that grassroots pressure is working. It's hard to see that, but the people who talk to the people who talk to the people, they're saying that it's working, and we've seen several signs of that in recent weeks. We are getting more and more people than ever that will go down there, that will talk to legislators, that will make phone calls, send emails, whatever. So it's working. Keep up the good work. True Texas Project is now, as of April, will be in 7 different counties. So it's Tarrant, Dallas, Denton, Collin, Lubbock, Grayson, and opening in April in Ellis.
Woo!
Yeah, so hopefully you all can find a meeting close to you and you can participate. But if you can't go to meetings, don't be discouraged. You can always participate in other ways with True Texas Project. Be sure that you're on our mailing list for starters so that you get all of our information. And then you get to choose where you're going to be active. So we kind of have something for everyone, and it's one of the things I think that makes it a great organization. Before I move on today, I want to tell you about something that I personally am launching with True Texas Project. I call it Operation Open the Texas Senate. Right now, the Texas Senate, if you want to go and observe in the gallery or testify at a Senate hearing or in some cases talk to a senator in their office, you have to take a COVID test, which they have conveniently set up in tents outside the building. Doesn't cost anything, and it's quick and easy and all that. But I personally have refused to do that, and most of my colleagues that have been going to Austin with me share that opinion. Now, if you're willing to do that, then great, go, because we need people to testify at Senate hearings. That's just a principle for me. I'm not going to do it. So I am launching a program to try to get the Senate to change that rule. It's a Senate rule. It's not required to get in the building. It's not required to do anything with the House. It's only on the Senate side. So I'm asking everybody to call, write, email, go in person, whatever. Every single senator. There's only 31 of them, so it's not that hard. Please tell everybody you know. Today you're going to learn how to find their names and their contact information online. It's easy, but I want to see thousands and thousands of messages going into those Senate offices. And then we'll see if grassroots pressure really is working or not. Okay, moving on the agenda. We normally have Jill Glover here to talk about the Republican Party of Texas legislative priorities. She is at SREC quarterly meeting this weekend, as are all of the SREC people. So you're stuck with me. Let's see, and I have a clicker here. Let's see if I can make this work.
It may be asleep. Give it a.
I might be pressing the wrong button. Which button is
Press
it?
the one on the top. It may be asleep.
The one on top?
Press it because it may be asleep. Yeah. Now try it.
Okay. And then this one goes backwards. All right, now I know how to work it. All right, so 2 sessions ago, for the first time, the Republican Party established legislative priorities, and they appointed Legislative Priorities Committee. So Jill Glover is the chairman of that committee, and they're doing an excellent job this year of informing the public about legislation that's happening on these different legislative priorities. And what to do about it, and alerts, like, oh, there's a hearing on Thursday and things like that. So these are the 8 legislative priorities: election integrity, religious freedom, gender modification, abolition of abortion, I should say, constitutional carry, monument protection, school choice, and ban taxpayer-funded lobbying. At the request of Chairman West, they have added one to that list, and that is the reining in of executive powers, which I think we all feel very strongly about. There are 2 bills out there right now on that one, HB 3 in the House and SB, I think it's 1025 in the Senate. The Senate bill is much better. We've been trying to kill HB 3 in the House. True Texas Project has also adopted legislative priorities. We've only adopted 6. So ours are election integrity, gender modification, abolition of abortion, ban taxpayer-funded lobbying, and rein in executive powers. The Legislative Priorities Committee, chaired by Jill, it consists of these people, and each one of these is focusing on one of the legislative priorities. So if you want to take a screenshot of that real quick with your phone, although it is available on the RPT website. So, for example, Tanya Robinson is focused on election integrity. She doesn't worry too much about monument protection because David Wiley is on top of that. It makes for a very efficient system, and I've been praising them at every opportunity, but it's never enough. They're doing an excellent job. These are some of the bills that they approved, but this slide is quite out of date, so I'm going to skip over it. You can sign up for alerts on the RPT website. There's a pull-down menu called Legislation, and there's a place to sign up. There's also a Facebook group where you can join that. It says, we will empower you with information, but you are the ones that make the difference. Then voters determine, was this session a success or a failure? Last session, all of the legislators and the governor were telling us what a wonderful success that session was. Historic legislation, they said. This is the most conservative session we've seen in our lifetimes. And all of the grassroots activists are going, I don't think so. And we raised a lot of cane about that in 2019, but we didn't get very far. So we need more citizens involved. That's why I'm glad y'all are here, because we need to keep up the pressure. We should be the ones that are deciding whether or not this session is a success. This is the website, and you'll notice in the red circle up there, that's the pull-down menu text ledge to sign up for emails and stat alerts. They're also putting out weekly reports on the legislative priorities, and if you sign up, you will get those. They usually come out on Thursday or Friday. Jill writes them, and it's just kind of an update of what's been happening that week. This is the tripping over my tongue, Strategic Texas Activist Team, otherwise known as STAT. So there's a Facebook group. You have to ask to join it, and you have to answer a few questions in order to get approved. But it's where they give you kind of the emergency things. Okay, Tina, we've got weird stuff coming up on the screen. Thank you.
Well, let me see what it is. I don't see it.
There we go. Oh, that's the Facebook cover page. This is just an example of if you're making a phone call about something. This one is addressed to the Speaker of the House saying, Mr. Speaker, I'm calling to respectfully remind you that Texas Republicans expect legislation to protect children from abusive medical treatments which attempt to change them from one sex to the other, which we both know is impossible. 95% of Republican voters in the 2020 primary asked for these protections. Thank you for protecting children by passing HB 1399 and 68 or a similar bill. That's just a sample message or phone call that you might want to use. I will urge you to keep those really brief. I've seen a lot of people share with me what they sent to their legislator, and it's like 2, 3, 4, 5 pages long. They're not going to read that, and it may be the greatest thing you've ever written, but they're not going to read it. So keep it brief, ask for what you want, be specific, and say why. And that's really all you need to say. You don't need to give personal stories in these kinds of messages. That's good for testimony. But if you're just calling, asking them to support or oppose a bill, this is a good example. So, action items for today. Go to the RPT website, which is texasgop.org, and do the pull-down menu text ledge and sign up for the weekly email and the strategic action alerts. You can also contact your own state representative and senator, post your comments on social media, and get your county executive committee to pass resolutions supporting the priorities as well. Those are things that you can do today. And that's just the Texas GOP logo, We Are the Storm. Someone's wearing that shirt today. Thank you. Okay, questions about RPT priorities? No, everybody knows about that.
I
Okay.
have one real quick. Kind of on your first comment, there is,
You're gonna have to speak up, sir.
I'm going back to your first comment on open the Senate.
Uh-huh.
Is there any movement on the lawsuit that,
Sid Miller's lawsuit, he just filed it a few days ago, so I don't think that there's any news. We're following that too, so we'll kind of let you know. I have shared with Sid that what I have put out on Facebook and sent out to our people. I haven't put it out to the TGP email list yet, but I will over the weekend. And between all of us, maybe we can make a difference there. Anyone else? Okay. So next up, Tina, we have the Citizen Advocate Training file. And we are on what is citizen advocacy? I'd like to say thank you to Tina Atkins back there in the back of the room running all of the AV.
Yeah.
And while I'm on it, just a big thank you to Mercury Studios and Glenn Beck for making this facility available for our meetings. They've been very generous with us and we appreciate them so much. All right, so what is citizen advocacy? It's just basically people joining together to try to affect political outcomes. So we might ask ourselves, what is politics? Well, we know that poly is a Latin word meaning many, right? And tick are blood-sucking parasites. So politics must be many blood-sucking parasites. And having recently spent time in Austin, I kind of get that feeling and always need a shower when I get home. But on a serious note, politics is actually the adjudication of power. Power is what it's all about. It's why some people run for office and keep running and try to stay in office. It's because of the power. It's not because of the wages. These state people learn about $7,200 a year. It's the power. Politics is also about confrontation. We're always either trying to convince somebody to vote for something or vote against it, right? And if they don't agree with us, then we're in a confrontational situation. I put a picture of Jonathan Stickland up here because he was the poster child for confrontation while he was in the Texas House. And this picture, especially the way he's got his hands out like this, you can tell he's confronting somebody about something. He was very, very good at it. Most of our elected people are not good at doing what he did. They don't have the courage to go up against each other. They're too busy trying to be polite, trying to get the Democrats to like them. So we need more people like Jonathan, and we need you guys to become agents of confrontation. There are two paths to this power. There's an direct path and an indirect path. The direct path is run for office. Now, some of us, a lot of people are stepping up to do that, and that's awesome. A lot of people will never do that for a number of reasons, and that's understandable too. But if you are someone that's in a position to do that, there's tons of help out there. If you want to do it, let us know. We'll connect you to the right people. But that's the direct path to power, is be one of them. The indirect path are things on the outside, like us, like True Texas Project, like Republican clubs, like other grassroots organizations, Texas Right to Life and Gun Owners of America. Those are agents of power on the outside. Of course, we have leftist activist groups out there doing the same thing. And then there's each one of you as an individual. You can become an agent, an advocate, and an agent of confrontation and power. Trust me, you can do this. I want you to be careful. Do not confuse power with access. You might have access to your state rep or your state senator because you know them. They come to your Republican club. You've had your picture taken with them 42 times. And you have their cell phone number. That's access. But if they don't listen to you, and if you are not prepared to call them out when they do the wrong things, then you have no power. Just because you get invited to every fundraising dinner that they have does not mean you have power. It means you have access, and it is not the same thing. This is a hard thing. And sometimes people get involved in politics and get caught up in that whole access thing, and they just think it's just so awesome that my state representative knows my first name and will take my phone calls. And that is awesome unless you're afraid to confront them when they don't do the right thing. My state representative is Matt Krause. I've known him since before he was elected. He's a great guy. He does wonderful things. But every now and then he does things that I think are just flat out wrong. And I do not hesitate to tell him. And we argue about it. And sometimes I convince him, sometimes he convinces me, and sometimes we walk away still friends but agreeing to disagree. So you need to be able to do that with your elected people. Don't get caught up in the friendship side of it. When they are down there legislating, they are not your friends, they are your elected representatives. Getting caught up in that whole friendship thing, we call that political Stockholm syndrome. You get to know the person, you like having the access, it gives you a little bit of influence. It's like being starstruck, so be careful about that. So power means you force politicians to act the way that you want, or you just replace them at the ballot box in the primary election. Don't get confused about the primary and the general. It's the primary where we need to exert our influence. That's why grassroots pressure works. Politicians want people to like them because they want to get reelected the next time. If you don't like them, you're not going to vote for them. So when we all start yelling and screaming because they're not doing the right thing, it does have an effect. They want to be loved. So who do you think makes laws in Texas? Is it the people on the inside of this building? Or is it the people on the outside of the building? This is a picture from, I forget what year it was quite a while ago, when Wendy Davis, Senator Wendy Davis, did her filibuster thing in her pink tennis shoes opposing an abortion bill. And all of the people you see in this picture turned out to support that bill. Again, I don't remember the specifics of the bill. This was a really long time ago. But people conservatives showed up en masse to support that bill, and of course, Wendy Davis was opposing it. Tim, you might remember, was it the sonogram bill?
This was the 83rd, I believe. This was when they rolled back the 24 weeks.
Oh, the 20-week ban, yeah. So it was lowering the threshold for a legal abortion, but it doesn't matter. This is the power of grassroots activism, and I don't think we have seen this since then. I saw those kind of numbers when they passed the HB4 banning sanctuary cities bill, but the numbers that turned out for that were the Democrats opposing it. So. Morton Blackwell tells us that political success is determined by the number and effectiveness of political activists on either side. So in order to be successful, we just need more numbers and to be more effective. Our efforts do pay off. This is another photo from that same day on the abortion bill. So if Morton is right, I just said this, we just need more people and we need more effectiveness. That's why I'm so excited about seeing you all here today and doing this the third time since January. In previous sessions, I did my first citizen advocate training in 2017. About 25 people showed up, and I thought that was awesome. In 2019, 38 people showed up. In 2021, we had 100 in January, 100 in February, and 100 in March. And I've done this training for Parker County conservatives. I'm doing it next month for Weiss County conservatives. We're going to do it in Lubbock County. We're taking it on the road because people are demanding it. So who knows how many votes do we need to win in the House and Senate in Texas? Well, my clicker thing is off, but I was supposed to surprise you after you guessed. We need 76 votes in the House to win and 16 in the Senate. So here's the question. How many Republicans do we have in the House and Senate? Does anybody know?
Over 76.
80, 80, and 18.
Close.
90.
83 in the House and 19 in the Senate. So we ought to be able to pass whatever we want, right? All those Republican priorities that you saw in the previous section should be a no-brainer. We have control of the Texas House, the Texas Senate, the governorship, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general. They're all Republicans. Actually what?
After the legislature, it was 18.
Oh, thank you. Why is it 18? Something changed since November?
I don't remember. I think it was.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. It's probably a special election somewhere. Somebody's, what?
Was it Ron White?
No, that's congressional. I'm just talking state.
Still a majority.
It's still a majority, that's right. So one of the reasons that legislation just doesn't automatically get passed because Republicans want it is that politicians don't like to do anything. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to make these people mad. They don't want to make those people mad. They just want to do the minimum they have to do to get by and get reelected the next time. It takes force, which is the political pressure we've talked about. So you need to learn to mobilize, which means recruit others. Talk to your family, your friends, your neighbors, your church people. Get them to do what you're doing. Embrace the fact that it's a numbers game. There's like over 6,000 bills filed in the Texas legislature this session. Now, not very many of them will make it through, but you know, it's a numbers game. Use the power of the True Texas Project name when you're talking. We are getting really good recognition all over the country, actually, as being a powerhouse group, you know, who has influence. So as long as you're I don't want you going out there representing things I haven't approved, but, you know, if I say, let's support HB whatever, when you're calling people, you can say, I'm Mary Smith and I'm with True Texas Project and we want you to support HB whatever. It helps. It's a force multiplier. Understand that it's going to require courage to force change. It takes courage to go down there and get up in front of a committee and testify, and they sometimes ask you questions, and it's a scary thing the first time you do it. But trust me, after you do it once, it's just easy. Those people are not that intimidating. They're just people like you and me, and always remember they work for you. You don't work for them. And it does require getting out of your comfort zone. It's very uncomfortable to drive 4 hours in the middle of the night to get to Austin and sit there for 12 hours in a committee hearing, waiting to have your name called. Don't be afraid, because we can do it together. This is just a picture of some of our citizen advocate trips to Austin. We try to have fun along the way. We try to do interesting things, and we are always trying to teach people. So don't worry that you're going to be left on your own to go do this. We go in groups, and we're constantly teaching people how to do it, teaching them how to find their way around the Capitol, whatever you need to know. I love this quote from Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." So the main job of a citizen advocate is to introduce new legislation or influence existing legislation, show up and support, testify at hearings, talk to key players, write letters, emails, phone calls, and stay abreast of what's happening. If you can't go to Austin, that's okay. There's always something else that you can do. If we're down there testifying in support of HB 6, you can be calling or writing your legislators and members of the committee, asking them to support it. This year, we have a big advantage in the House. They are letting people make comments online with a form. So there's a link that you click, and if you can't be there, you can make a comment that way, and it does go into the official record of the committee. We've never had that before, so that's pretty good. The Senate has not had that, but just a day or two ago, Senator Hughes came out with a new email address, which he says on any Senate bills that it will be directed to the appropriate committee. So it's not quite the same, but it's better than we had before. You don't have to be an expert and know about every piece of legislation. Don't be intimidated when you go read a bill and it's confusing and it's hard. Don't worry about it. We're going to teach you some things today about how to do that and make it a little more understandable. But it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me too. But that's why we use people that we trust, that are experts on different things, you know, on gun issues. We have experts that we go to there, on life issues. We have experts there. There's always somebody that can advise us. It helps to get to know the committees. That's where the real work is done. Nothing goes to the floor for a vote without first going through a committee. So they're the first people that you have to convince. So think about that. Always have a strategy and a plan if you're going to Austin, and an overall game plan, and realize that failure is a learning experience. Don't get discouraged. I'm going to skip over these basic do's and don'ts. They're pretty basic common sense. That last one, get to know the people, the staff members. Don't be discouraged if you want to go see Representative so-and-so and he's never in his office. He shouldn't be in his office. He should be out doing the work that he's supposed to be doing, which is usually somewhere else. But don't overlook staff. They're very important. They're the ones that get information to the representative. And if you get to know them, they're going to welcome your input. They're going to welcome your advice. You can help provide them with information and support. So it's important. Following up with thank you cards and letters, that's a really important tip that goes a long way. If you have a meeting with a representative, the next day, send them a thank you card. You can send an email, but a handwritten card is so much more impactful. And even if you meet with staff, send them at least an email and thank them for their time. It's courtesy and respect, and it just goes a long way. And then always remember your manners, because if you're representing True Texas Project, we expect you to be polite and respectful at all times. Don't send derogatory things or get nasty with your emails. Don't raise your voice when you're talking to them. Always polite and respectful and everything. Firm, but polite and respectful. No whining or complaining allowed in citizen advocacy. There's no crying in citizen advocacy. And if you're representing True Texas Project, do not express opinions that are contrary to the ones that we put out. We don't expect anybody to agree with us 100%. We just expect you, if you disagree, to talk to people as yourself, not as a representative of True Texas Project. And don't waste people's time. Be brief and concise. I actually had to cut off a person once. There were 3 of us, and we went to talk to a staffer about a specific bill, and he just talked and talked and talked and talked about the city that he lives in and what they were doing, and statistics about that particular city, which just weren't even relevant to the topic. And I finally just, kind of had to cut him off because he was wasting the time. So be mindful of that. Questions about basic citizen advocacy? Yes, sir.
You talked about testifying in front of these committees. That's a new idea to probably most of us. Tell us about how that works. Some of us have been down to the Tarrant County Commissioners Court over the last year. We don't know anything about going to the state capitol.
Okay, we are going to cover that. That's one whole segment of our program today, is how to testify at hearings. But if you've been to the Commissioners Court, it's a similar situation. You register, they call your name, you get your 2 minutes, your 3 minutes, or whatever they are allowing you. You say your piece, and then you sit down. But Rebecca Hardy is going to do a whole segment on that with tips on how to be more effective and what the process is and registering and all that. So we'll get to that. Yes?
Do you post on the True Texas Project Facebook page when you're preparing to go to Austin, for those of us who would be interested?
Well, sometimes I do, but if it's like a really important day. But for the most part, I only send those notices to people that are on my citizen advocate list. And I'll talk to you at the end of the day about how to get on that. But even though you get True Texas Project emails, the general ones, you have to sign up for Citizen Advocate. It's a separate deal. I don't send Citizen Advocate stuff to everybody because 90% of it will go in the trash, and I want committed people reading those emails that are ready to take action. So you just have to email me and say, I want to be on Citizen Advocate list. And I appreciate it if you do that. Tell me where you live and or who your representatives are. Yes?
How much has True Texas Project been involved in mobilizing at the county and city level? Because with the last year with our legislature not being in session and playing the card of, well, we can't do anything because Abbott won't call anything, it really fell to us as citizens at the city and county level to mobilize and get into our commissioners' courts. And leading with a group of people at Tarrant County Commissioners Court, we maybe have 15 people.
That's a lot.
20 people. I mean, we started with 3 and we grew, and there's still, unfortunately, I don't live in Tarrant County anymore, and some of those people are still continuing. But without those numbers, it really is falling on deaf ears that, hey, the citizens are not for this mask mandate. They're not for you closing businesses or closing churches, which is what Tarrant County Judge Whitley did.
I know. we launched a grassroots effort to make them change that, both the city of Fort Worth and the county of Tarrant. When they originally issued their orders, it was churches are prohibited from meeting in person. We got them to change that to say discouraged from meeting in person. So that grassroots pressure worked. We did it in Dallas County too. The Dallas County Commissioners changed the language of their disaster order. So don't think that it isn't working or that it's falling on deaf ears. I know it seems like it is. But as I said before, in the state legislature, when you talk to people that are behind the scenes, it's getting attention. And again, it's a numbers game. It's a long-term thing. You don't change anything overnight. And getting 15 people to show up at a commissioner's court, my goodness, that's huge. I can tell you how many times I've been down there speaking all by myself on some conservative issue. So don't be discouraged. What you're doing is working and you're doing the right things. And all the things you're going to learn here today are pretty much focused on state legislature, but they work at the city, at the county, at the national level. It's the same principles. Now, you asked how are we getting engaged in that? We are doing that as much as we have the bandwidth to do it. You know, we're just a small group of volunteers for the most part. But we have a program called Liaisons. So we assign volunteer liaisons to as many elected individuals and groups as we can. But it's hard to find that many volunteers. Now, I have a very good liaison to Tarrant County. What county do you live in now?
Rusk.
I'm sorry?
Rusk.
Rusk. I don't even know where that is.
It's over in East Texas, South Tyler.
Okay. Well, we need more liaisons. So, you know, that might be something someone in the room today is interested in doing. Because then when the liaison says, hey, this and so is on the agenda for the county or the city next week, we try to put out the word and try to get people. The mask thing in Tarrant County is, I quit even talking about it because I just, you're right, it felt like we were wasting our time. But you have to keep it up. That's the only advice I have. I think I saw another hand over here. We'll take one more question. Yes?
I was going to say, I've been to that meeting. I've spoken to the Tarrant County Commissioners 14 times. And it's the same. It's me, Janet, Rebecca, and Blanca. So to me, it is falling on deaf ears. Nobody else. We went out and put flyers in stockyards in Dallas, all over Fort Worth. One time, between all of us, we got 69 people to write in. So what does Judge Whitley do? He bans the reading of their messages. So now, he puts it on the website, and it's with their information, their addresses. And then, we now have to show a medical, we have to show a doctor's note not to wear a mask there. So that, it discourages people from going.
Yep.
So this,
you know, I butted heads with Glenn Whitley myself on numerous occasions. I know what he's like. I don't want to tell you to give up, but he has lifted the mask mandate now, so you know, at least there's that. But he did that because the governor did it. I think Glenn Whitley was covering his own behind. You know, as long as the governor had a mask mandate, he wasn't going to lift it in Tarrant County. But at some point, you have to say, okay, I've done all I can do for that issue. Now I'm going to focus on this issue. It's a personal choice. And I mean, I appreciate your efforts, and I'm sorry you don't get more support. But what you're telling me that you aren't getting, to me, is huge.
I've delivered 10,000 of these all the way to the state of Maine. That's how upset I was. 10,000 flyers about corruption. And we still can't get people there. So I don't know what it's going to take. It's so frustrating.
Do you have a site to like get home and people?
Okay.
We're just people that have been, I've lost my job over the mask. My kids have been kidnapped because of the disaster.
All right, we're not going to spend any more time talking about masks. Y'all can get together and talk about it afterwards. It's best to get plugged in with groups that already exist, like ours. just all depends on the town and the area and the people. I think the message being sent here is this stuff isn't easy, people. I mean, remember what I just told you about the first time I held this class? 25 people showed up. Out of how many thousands of people that were active with our group? 25. But the word's getting out. A year and a half ago, before the mask stuff, nobody showed up at county commissioners' things for anything. They raise your taxes every single year. I'm down there almost every single year saying, don't raise our taxes. You have to cut your budget, and I am the only one. So when you can get several people to show up for your cause, you're doing good.
How can we get that truth? I guess I think what she's, and maybe I'm asking because I think that where she's going with this is how do we get, because it starts at the local level and it moves up to the state level and then the federal level. How do we organize and maybe get True Texas Project also involved in setting up these maybe subgroups to be going out and petitioning also our local levels. I think that maybe that was.
Well, for starters, we need more liaisons. I have a liaison to the Tarrant County Commissioners. Don't have one in Dallas. Don't have one in Collin. Don't have one in Denton. I just recently got someone for the city of Fort Worth. Don't have one for the city of Grapevine or the city of Colleyville or the city of Garland. You know, so step up and be a liaison for starters, because we can't mobilize people about issues that we don't know are happening. So that's the start. We really need to move on. I'll be around until the very end to answer further questions. Our next speaker is going to talk about the legislative process. And he's going to tell you about how it's supposed to work, and then he's going to tell you about how it really does work. It is Tim Hardin, and he is a former chief of staff for Representative Jonathan Stickland, so he knows the ins and outs of the Austin Capitol and what goes on behind the scenes as well as what goes on in front of the microphones. He is currently now with Texans for Fiscal Responsibility and is doing some great work with them on monitoring legislation and advising us on what's good and what's bad and what's happening in Berlin. So please welcome Tim Hardin.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? Oh, we can click our own thing today? Oh, we're on camera. Got it. Thank you, Fran. My name is Tim Hardin. I'm Executive Director for Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. As Fran just said, I was the former Chief of Staff for Representative Jonathan Stickland. He represents House District 92. That's Hershey's and Bedford. I did spend about 8 years in the Capitol. We're going to talk about the legislative process today, but before we do that, let me plug my organization. Our website is texastaxpayers.com. texastaxpayers.com. We mainly advocate for fiscal tax issues, although in general it's for smaller government. We have started scoring bills already. You can find that on our website. You can subscribe to our email, which is it's twice a week. We give updates on the legislature and what's going on. And then, of course, you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter before we get canceled. All right, let's talk about the Capitol and the legislative process and what really happens from the beginning of a bill until it is passed into law. Oh, yes. I'm not used to clicking my own here. All right. So, first step is going to be introducing a bill. So, how does it work? So, it can be introduced in either chamber. A co-sponsor helps. So, what is a co-sponsor? So, a bill can either start in the House or the Senate. If you have a co-sponsor, which means someone in the opposite chamber decides to bring an identical bill, it saves you time in the process, and we'll kind of go over that here in just a minute. Pre-filing bills starts in November, right after the election. That is long gone. It runs through 60 days of the calendar session. Our bill filing deadline has already passed, and appropriation bills are mandated to start in the House. So how does it really work? So most bills are thought of by lobbyists and special interest groups, quite honestly. Like in my experience, we have got some bill ideas from citizen advocates or interest groups, but just speaking statistically by sheer numbers and percentages, most bills are brought by lobbyists to legislators, and that is how they get their start. But very few are based on party platforms, the RPT platform, or constituent ideas, although there are some that actually do start that way. So drafting a bill, how does this work? So legislators are free to draft their own bills. So if you want to literally write a bill out on a computer and submit it, you are able to do that. However, there is an organization called LTC, or the Legislative Council. They are basically an army of attorneys that have attorney-client privilege with each representative and their staff. And so most bills, 99.9%, are drafted through the LTC system. So we say, hey, we want to bill about this, maybe give them a couple different provisions, and then they draft the legislation for us. So the main reason that this is done is to ensure a clean bill, or one that is void of points of order, or we call them POOs in the legislature. So all that is a procedural mistake, or some sort of a mistake within the bill that references code in the incorrect way. It's a very easy way for a bill to die, but vetting it through the Legislative Council can help that process. They aren't perfect and they don't catch everything, and sometimes I'm convinced that they purposely put things in there, but for the most part, they are a helpful organization. The LTC does have confidentiality with each member. So how does this really work? So most committee chairs will not accept a non-LTC vetted draft. The reason why it's frustrating, but at the same time, they don't want their committee and their hearing to be reflected on badly because there's a mess up in the process. As a matter of fact, we just saw an example of this, not necessarily having to do with the point of orders, but if you're paying attention to HB 6 and what happened with Briscoe Cain, this was an example of him. Basically, the committee had to shut down because a point of order was created. He got into an argument with Jessica Gonzalez over who was the chair of the committee. She was trying to do something on the immigration bill. He recessed, but he did not say what time they were coming back. That was the order. And so they decided, okay, well, the bill, that would mess the bill up and pretty much every other bill in that committee, so they decided to reschedule the entire hearing, and now it's been pushed to April 1st. So there's just kind of one example of a procedural mistake that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it will kill legislation if one of those is on a bill itself. So, like I said, it prevents points of order. The reality is, many legislators purposely place or leave them as a fail-safe. What do I mean by that? Not all of these point of orders or procedural mistakes are purposeful, but a lot of times the legislators are aware that they are in their legislation, and they kind of hold that in their back pocket as a trump card. And how that works is once the bill actually gets to the floor, if someone comes and amends the bill in a way that they don't like it, they will literally go take that mistake they know about and go to one of their friends and say, hey, I need you to call the point of order, go ahead and kill my bill, I don't want this to go out anymore. And they will poison pill their own bill because it's changed into something they don't want. So sometimes this is used strategically as well. So let's talk about what a bill looks like, the anatomy of a bill. This is very simplified. I had to scrunch everything into 20 minutes. But here are the main parts of the bill. So we have the heading, which at the very top there, a bill entitled an act. The caption is simply a sentence that gives the general subject of a bill. It doesn't usually do a good job describing exactly what the bill does. It just kind of names a subject. I believe this is Toad's bill. This is one relating to the definition of abuse of a child. This is to do with the hormone treatment for kids. The enacting clause, they usually say all the exact same thing being enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas. And then we have your little LTC stamp down here at the bottom. It says 87R 124, and then it has some letters there. And what that means is it's the 87th regular session. This was likely the 124th bill to be submitted to draft. And then NCKD is actually the drafter's name. So that's the actual attorney who drafted the legislation. Committee chairs will be looking for that magic stamp. If it's not on there, they will either demand you bring a committee substitute or they won't hear the bill most of the time. There is exceptions to that.
What does LTC stand for again?
The Legislative Council. So substantive provision. So how do we know something is being changed in law? This is what we do in a bill when we're changing current statute. So at the very top, you kind of see the management underline. So an underline means we're actually adding language to current statute or code. If you look here where we have the strike-throughs, that is where we're removing language from certain parts of code or statute. We also have what's known as a repealer section. This is something that is not in every single bill, but it is a very effective means to sneak things behind people. And the reason is they don't actually spell out or write out what's being changed. They will just say, like, this is the following provisions are repealed. Article 45.059, and they'll just list all of these areas of code that they're striking the entire section. Most people don't take the time to go click that button, to click that hyperlink and go see what they're actually repealing. So there's a lot of sneaky things that are pushed through repealer sections. One example of how we snuck something through a few sessions ago, if you remember when we repealed all the knife provisions where we had like brass knuckles and all that, we struck that in a repealer section. And so the good guys can use it as well, but a lot of times this is used to do sneaky things. So you want to pay attention if you see that repealer section in a bill. And then finally we have the effective date provision down here, and it just says the act takes effect on September 1st, 2021. That's typically the default date. They can set another date, or as soon as it's passed, that is going to require 2/3 majority of either chamber in order to get something to be effective as soon as it's signed by the governor. So how it works, the committee process. So after first reading of bills, they're assigned to committee. And so I don't know if you've ever watched a legislative session before, but typically at the end, there's a clerk that comes up and they read bills like it is a, oh, what did we have a name earlier? It sounds like. They read bills like they're an auctioneer. And basically the idea behind first, second, and third reading is that the legislators hear the bill 3 times before it's actually passed out of the chamber. The modern reality is, especially on first reading, no one's in there, no one's listening to it, they just kind of ramble on, and it's just a constitutional requirement they go on. But after it has been read by the clerk, it will be assigned to a specific committee. The bill will then go to the committee. Committees in the House are based on seniority and appointment. What does that mean? The longer you're in the House as a representative, you get 1 seniority pick. So you can say, hey, I've been here for 4 sessions. I really want to be on state affairs. The speaker, assuming you have more seniority than others that are requesting that, has to give you that committee. The appointment is he gets to choose the other one for you. The Senate, they're all done by appointment. There's no seniority. So the House has a little bit of an advantage there. You know, update some software here.
Tina,
Oh,
we got a software.
And just, you've lost it.
yeah, I had to reset it.
So in committee hearings, there is essentially 3 outcomes when a bill is heard. The bill can have no action on it. Typically that it's left pending. So they'll hear a bill, and most of the time they're going to say we're going to leave this bill pending. If they do want to pass a bill, a lot of times they'll bring it back at a consecutive committee hearing and they will vote that out. They can get an unfavorable report. So if there is no action and it's left pending, they don't bring it back up, your bill's dead. If they give an unfavorable report, they don't like the bill, they vote it down, it's dead. If they give a favorable report, then they can either give a favorable report in its current form, or they can recommend amendments. And this is where you see will be passed on to the calendars committee. So favorable reports are sent to calendars to be placed on the floor. The calendars committee is a very powerful committee. They get to decide what bills come up when on the floor. There are also time limits. They don't necessarily have to deal with a bill, and a lot of times they will wait that time out, because the longer a bill sits in the calendars committee, the more likely it is to die, because the way that it works is the further and further we go, we're already past the halfway point session, the closer and closer we get to signing die of the last day, bills start piling up, and instead of voting on 5 and 6 bills a day, they're voting on 170 bills a day, and they never get through the whole thing, and so they roll supplemental calendars, and so your bill gets kind of stuck in all that mess if it's been sitting in the calendars committee too long. So it's another tactic they use to kill legislation. Another one that Representative Tony Tinderholt has tried to fight against is the idea of tagging bills. And so in calendars, a lot of times they'll tag bills, and that means they don't want that to get out, and so they'll tag it and just kind of push it to the back of the line. So how does committee hearing really work? So the reality is most bills are decided before they even hear it. Now, we're mainly here talking about your caustic issues, right? If it's a pro-life bill, if it's a pro-gun bill, those reps already know how they're voting on that. Other bills, there are opportunities for citizens to educate legislators. I would say if, for instance, we just had constitutional carry heard kind of Sunday and Friday, kind of bled into another day, those reps know how to vote on that. They're very familiar with the issue, and they're either pro or against. And so I would say sometimes to be more effective, it might be more worth your time to call on bills like that and just code officers on that instead of going and testifying, unless you're with an interest group and you have numbers coming with details. Leverage and numbers are really the key, and we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. It is rare that testimony sways the opinion of major bills, but it does happen. And there's a lot of those, especially when they were hearing a few sessions back with like CBD, and we had a lot of epileptics come, and I was blown away at a lot of stuff I didn't understand about CBD and how it affected epilepsy and how it could bring back seizures. And I absolutely believe that hearing swayed the views of a lot of the committee members, and I believe Clint was the one who carried that bill, and it passed. And there's a number of other examples as well. So after committee, we go to committee, it goes to calendars, they set a House calendar, it goes to the floor, and then we finally have floor action. So there we have our boss. It says the votes are made up and the rules don't matter. Why don't the rules matter sometimes? Well, I think another example we just had was Brian Hughes in the Senate introduced a piece of ERCOT or the PUC legislation. He filed it after the filing deadline on a Monday morning. It was, all the rules were suspended like 4 different times. He pushed it through committee, pushed it through calendars, brought it to the floor, they voted second and third, all in just like a matter of like 4 hours. And so it's a very common practice for them to suspend rules or suspend the constitutional rules on legislation to just ram things through. So we tell you that because don't ever let a legislator tell you that they ran out of time or they couldn't pass a bill, because they can. They literally can do whatever they want, all it takes. So if you're advocating for abolition of abortion or constitutional carry, they can go and suspend rules and push that thing through if they want to. Now, do I think that's the best way to pass a bill? Absolutely not. I think the process is there for a reason, and we should go through it. But don't let them lie to you and say that they ran out of time. It's not true. So how does this work? A bill comes to the floor. Second reading comes up. So essentially, an author will lay out their bill, come to the front mic in the House or in the Senate, and they will basically say, here's my bill, here's what it does, and then it opens it up for floor debate. At that time, that's when they'll bring amendments. People who oppose the bill will try and bring amendments that hurt the bill. People who like the bill will try and bring perfecting amendments or amendments that help the bill. It is then passed, and then it is moved to third reading, which is typically the next day, unless they suspend rules, and you can go right after that. On third reading, it's essentially the same thing. Most of the time, the debate's over. They don't keep pressing unless they're really trying to stop a bill from passing. And to stick an amendment on at third reading, I believe is two-thirds majority. And so after it is passed through one chamber, after third reading, it will then move to the other chamber. So from House to Senate or Senate to House, and start the process all over again. So we'll go through committee, and we'll go through the floor, and then we move to the next section. So how does this really work? So just as in committees, votes are typically lifted before debate. So most reps already know how they're going to vote on a particular piece of legislation. As a matter of fact, the Lieutenant Governor and Speaker typically shield their supporters, or those more so the Speaker, because they're elected within the chamber. So they shield the people who got them into power by protecting them from taking hard votes
crazy gas nonsense that's a violation of the Constitution. They really could have convened had they had maybe enough pressure. If they can just throw out rules anytime they want, then.
Well, it depends. So if we're in the interim period, the only person who can call a special session.
Too many courts.
Okay. So if we're in an interim period, or we're not in a session, the only person who can call them into session would be Abbott. Once we are in session, that would be the case. They could either, and there is a number of bills that are trying to take away some executive authority from Abbott. So in an interim period, I would say you would have to focus your calls to Abbott's office because he's the only one who can do anything. There are a number of pandemic bills and possible amendments that could come that would require Abbott during a pandemic situation or disaster to call a special session. So there's things we can do legislatively or constitutionally that would help that out. I'm gonna keep going and then we'll ask questions later. So what I mean by shielding supporters, so if there's the Constitution carries a perfect example. Many times it would not come, or the last go around it would be stuck in calendars, because most, at least statistically and through polling we did, most people want this to pass. But there was a number of reps who didn't want to have to take that vote and have to say, well, I support this or I don't support this. So the way they do that is they just delay it, and they use all these procedural maneuvers to prevent them from taking hard votes. Taking hard votes on the constitutional care or abolition of abortion or any of the RBT priorities. It's really common for them to be protected so that they don't have to go and answer hard questions during campaign season. It's really the good old boys club and the favors that they do for each other. And of course, this prevents accountability. So when the bill returns to the originating chamber after passage in the opposite chamber, there's a few different outcomes. So if it is amended in the opposite chamber, or if it is amended and the originating chamber concurs, it is enrolled and sent to the governor. So we can do that. If a House bill goes to the Senate and the Senate amends that bill, it is then sent back to the House. The House gets to vote on whether they concur with the Senate amendments that were placed on that, or they don't concur. If they do not concur, or if they do concur, then it goes to the governor. It's engrossed. If they do not concur, then they set a committee. So there's 5 reps from the House and 5 senators, and they will meet and they will reconcile the legislation, and then it will be brought again, and then they have to concur or not concur with the committee report. So that's how they kind of work out the differences in both chambers. And so here we have King Abbott. So the governor's act. After it is engrossed, it is sent to the governor. Upon receiving a bill, the governor has 10 days to either sign, veto, or he can allow it to become law with no signature. Those are laws that he doesn't necessarily like, but he doesn't want to have to pay the price for vetoing it, so he'll just kind of straddle and have one foot in each place, so he can not have to answer hard questions in the campaign season either. Bills do take effect 91 days after signing die or the last day of session. September 1st, unless the effective date was specified and it is passed by 2/3 in both chambers. And that's it. That was condensed very, very short. There is much more to the process, but we do have time for a couple of questions. So what do we got?
Who hires the LTC attorneys?
So there is members in the Legislative Council, or really bureaucrats, that hire more bureaucrats.
So taxpayers are paying their income.
Yes. They are state employees.
So if you're a representative, you're expected confidentiality, you're expected to trust that they're gonna put what you say in that.
I mean, legally we do that confidentiality. So if it was found that they didn't honor that, then I would assume they'd be disbarred. So I don't want everyone to think that the LTC is a bad organization. It's not necessarily a bad organization. It is, sometimes it can be painful, and sometimes I have to double check the work, right? But the intention is to give us clean bills. So that's the intention.
Hey, Tim, will you repeat the question for the live stream?
Absolutely, I will.
He was also about LTC, so who are they accountable to?
Who is the LTC accountable to? take this with a grain of salt, because I don't even know if I know the code there, but I would assume their bosses, the bureaucrats, the bosses in the LTC, but I'm not going to claim 100% that is.
I guess that's your answer, so the boss of the FTC.
I would assume who he was appointed to. That sounds like I need to add that to the PowerPoint presentation, because I'll be honest, I'm ignorant as far as who hires the bosses. I assume they're appointees, most bureaucrats are. So it would either be the governor or a combination of the governor, lieutenant governor, and yes, sir.
It sounds like we're wanting more information about this LTC. Like, is this an appointment indefinitely? Is it for one session?
They're bureaucrats, so they're hired as a job in the same way that like a legislative staffer like myself. So it's at the discretion of who hired them is when they go. So there's not term limits or anything like that. And the question, by the way, was how long is an LTC attorney, able to stay in his current position? And until it's fired. There's no term limits.
It's just another cog in the bureaucracy.
Correct. I mean, the Capitol's full of bureaucrats. I was a bureaucrat. I was hired by my rep. So that's the nature of the beast. Yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned that all the internal rules can be circumvented or possibly suspended. What does it take to suspend those, and who can suspend those? So what are the limits on that? Because I'm assuming there's times that one legislator wants to move it forward, but somebody else will say, sorry, we're not going to bend the rules this time.
Okay, so the question is, how are the rules suspended? Who has the power to do that? The answer is, it's typically either the Speaker of the House or the Lieutenant Governor. And I'm giving simplistic answers here, and things are always more convoluted than a simplistic answer, but essentially, if a Speaker wants to move a bill through the process, or Lieutenant Governor, he will make a motion to suspend whatever rule he's trying to suspend, and then they will take a vote on that, typically. Now, most of the time when they're doing that, you can object, and they'll take a record vote. Most of the time, they're just kind of voice voted through. They're like, okay, there's no objection, great, we're suspending the rules, and that's it. Now, if a rep wants to come and say, hey, well, can you suspend the rules for my bill? What usually happens is, and my boss has done this a number of times, is he goes to the back and says, hey, can I be recognized to suspend a bill? And you know what the Speaker says? No, I will not recognize you. Parliament, and then if you've ever seen clips of Jonathan Stickland, he's in parliamentary inquiry, and he'll just berate them for hours and hours and hours, but they'll just give the same response. Nope, we won't do it. Nope, we won't do it. It's only for essential bills or special bills, right? That's really bills that they want to push through the process very quickly, but the individual reps or senators don't have a whole lot of say in that. They just kind of have to go along to get along, or deal with it behind the scenes. They don't want to really talk about it from a microphone or in the public eye. If that makes sense. Yes, ma'am.
Is this presentation on your website?
This is not on my website, but Fran has the presentations.
It's going to be. It is not yet, but patience.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason why a bill would be introduced into the Senate first or the House first?
Not necessarily. I mean, ultimately, it's whatever bill the senator or the rep wants to carry. Now, like I said, it is worth it to get a co-sponsor on a bill, to have a representative have a friend in the Senate and say, hey, I'm going to bring this bill on property taxes, and they agree on language. They keep the language the same, and the goal is to not let either bill get amended or changed, so that way, when they're both passed out of the same chambers, you can actually pass them out simultaneously. You avoid a lot of the headaches because you have a co-sponsor. So it's a good strategy to speed up the process. Are we doing on time, Brandon? We
I
good?
think that's your 25, so you're doing really well.
Okay, wonderful. So one more question? One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Then you said the LTC, that's all attorneys, is that correct?
Correct.
And, I thought there was an amendment, there was like a hidden amendment that attorneys aren't supposed to be even legislators, but anyway, the word attorney means to turn over. So we're already in trouble as a society when these attorneys are in there, because they're basically committing emoluments violations. If they're writing these and they profit off of bills maybe they write up, they're actually using legalese that people don't comprehend. unless you have a Black's Law Dictionary, correct?
Um,
But like, say I go in there and I say, I want a bill passed. Can we go to the LTC? Because if I want a bill passed saying, mothers shouldn't lose their kids to child abusers and never see their children again, like in my case. Those lawyers are never going to write that up because they profit, or their friends profit from it. The family court lawyers profit from that. So we have no hope.
So what I would say to that, and that was a really long question, she's essentially kind of asking about kind of ethics of being an LTC attorney now. I will say kind of the scenario you're putting, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Most of the LTC attorneys are fresh out of law school from UT typically. They don't have all these political connections. Now you yourself, no, you cannot come to the LTC and ask it. It is a service, literally think about it as a service provided to the legislators. And it's meant, or its intention, is to prevent procedural errors and to draft things in the reference code correctly. Now, there are a number of bills we chose not to draft with LTC, and we drafted with outside attorneys that we trusted, but eventually we pushed it through the system and pushed it through the LTC to get that magic little stamp. I don't know if I would necessarily say that there's egregious ethics violations going on with the LTC attorneys, but is there kind of that pay for play and shady stuff that goes on behind the scenes with legislators? I've seen it, so yeah, that definitely does happen. I'll be outside these doors. I want to give everybody else their time to speak. If you have questions, come see me right outside the door so we can serve others. Thank you all very much. Once again, Texas.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Our next topic is the Texas Legislature Online, or we call it the TLO. Who's tried to use the TLO on your own?
I told her.
Okay, not very many of you. This will become your absolute best friend if you really want to get involved in Texas state legislative things. Now, this doesn't help you for national things or for county or city things. This is just state legislative things. But everything you ever wanted to know about the Texas legislature and things you probably don't want to know are on this website. So it can get a little bit technical, and normally I have Sylvia, I just lost Sylvia's last name, Guzman. Sylvia Guzman normally teaches this segment for me, but she had a scheduling conflict today. So I'm taking over for her, and I'm probably not nearly as good. But we'll give it a try. So the website address is capital.texas.gov. But if you go into any sort of a search engine and put in TLO or Texas Legislature Online, it'll take you there. This is the home page when you first open it up. So you'll notice across the top we have home, we have My TLO, House, Senate, Legislation Search Committee's calendars. So this is the home page. And we've got a section for the House and a section for the Senate. This is where you can look up individual members and their contact information. You can find out about committees. If you click on committees there, it's going to show all the various committees in the House. You click on one of the committee names and it'll take you to members of that committee. One of the best features of the TLO is this section in the middle, right here. It's where you can search the bills. So, you've heard us throwing around bill names, HB3, HB6. If you don't know what that is, this is where you go, and you can either search on a word or phrase, or you can search on a bill number. Now, I personally don't use the word phrase section very often. Some people do, but you know, if you put in abolish abortion, you're going to get thousands of reference because those two words are used in a lot of different places. I like to try to find out the bill number, and there's numerous ways to do that too. But if I know the bill number, I'll click on the circle that says bill number and put in HB3 or HB6 or whatever and click the go button. And I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. Additional searches, you can do text searches. I don't personally use this section very often, but the other thing I want to stress to you today is to give it a try. Go in there and play with it. You absolutely cannot hurt anything because all you can do on this website is look. There is nothing you can do to harm anything, so don't be intimidated by it. Click on all this stuff and see where it takes you. There's a place for amendments. Bills get amended all the time, and sometimes you need to go read that because that could change the whole legislation. You read a bill as it's filed and you think you understand it. It gets amended, it could turn it into something completely different. These are just right here how-tos. How do I find a list of bill or follow the status and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about MyTLO, which is where you can personally track bills that you're interested in. It's the second one at the top. If you click on MyTLO, you're going to get a pull down of something else. You can set up an account with a username and a password, and then you can set alerts, like if you're particularly interested in HB6, you can tell it to contact you every time something happens to HB6. So if it gets referred to committee, if the committee has a hearing, if the committee votes on it, if it gets scheduled for floor action, every single thing that happens to a bill that you put on your alert, you'll get an email so that you know exactly what's happening. It's one of the best features of this whole thing. Over on the right, the top box, it says access mobile version of TLO. You can do this when you are in the Capitol using the Capitol Wi-Fi system. You can bring it up on your phone or your tablet or your laptop, whatever, and you can do all the things that you can do at the Capitol kiosks, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. You can do off of your personal device if you are in the building and connected to the Wi-Fi. Legislative activity, this is where you can watch all the broadcasts if you can't be there but you want to watch it. Every single thing that's done in the House and Senate is broadcast, and this is where you do it. The top one is the live broadcast, but then you can get into archives if you miss it. You missed what happened Thursday and you want to go back and see it, you can go back and find it in the archives. The next box, legislative process, those are the kinds of things Tim just talked to you about. But these are just educational things so that you can educate yourself. And then there's a whole section for redistricting, which is a whole other topic for another day, and I don't know a lot about it, so we're not going to talk about it today. So here we've clicked on MyTLO, so you get an option of bill lists, bill alerts, saved searches. I don't know what mobile device support is, and then RSS feeds. Hardly anybody uses those anymore, but when I first created this website, it was a popular thing. It was just another alert process. In this example, she has clicked on alerts, and the pull down she gets is bills, calendars, committee notices, committee minutes, subjects, and adjournment notices. So you can set alerts for all of that. So at the beginning of session, I always go in and click alerts on all the committees that I know I'm going to be interested in. Some I don't, because I generally don't get involved in things like parks and recreations and licensing and administration. So I don't click those. I click the big ones, state affairs, elections, public health, things like that, where most of the things I'm going to be interested are going to fall. You never know for sure, but you can usually guess. So every time a committee does anything, if I click that alert, I'm going to get an email. I just learned from Paul this morning that the Elections Committee has rescheduled their snafu from last Thursday. They've rescheduled it from this Thursday. He says it was posted at 5 o'clock last night. I haven't checked the email, but it's there. An alert saying this committee's gonna meet next Thursday. So your My TLO section is one of the most important things. Everything else in there is just for you to get information. But the My TLO is the way you personalize it, so you can focus in on the things that you want to know about. Remember, over 6,000 bills. Nobody can deal with that, so you have to be able to narrow that down. When you click on the TLO, if you don't already have an account, this is what you're going to see. You have to create an account, so you put in your email and you create a password. Now this is key if you're going to go to the Capitol to either testify at a hearing or just register for or against the bills that are being heard in committee. You will use that username and password when you get there. You have to go to the little computer kiosks that they have throughout the extension of the Capitol, and you register for the things for that day, but you start with this account. So if you're going to go the first time, make sure you set up this account before you go, and you remember your password and your username. It'll just save time when you get down there. If you don't do that, then you have to create the account once you get there. This is what the kiosks look like in the hallways of the extension in the Capitol. There are ones for Senate registration and different ones for House. Rebecca will talk more about that. Is Rebecca here? You haven't seen Rebecca? I haven't seen Rebecca. Okay, just checking because she's up there. So this is a list of all the things that you will find under the My TLO feature. You can create lists of bills that you want to watch, and each time you run the list, the information is updated. You can set the alerts, you have saved searches, and you have mobile device support. So here, across the top, you see in red, so this is the search button clicked, and these are all the different searches that you can do. Again, the easiest way to do this is to know the bill number. And another thing, shortcut that I take, if I know that Kyle Biederman filed a constitutional carry bill and I can't think of the number, if you go click on Kyle Biederman under House members, it'll have a list of all the bills that Kyle Biederman has authored. And you can usually quickly run through there and say, oh, okay, it's 1359 or whatever. Excuse me. So that's another way. Everybody finds their own shortcuts for this stuff, and you have to just do what works for you. What works for me may not work for you. And if Sylvia were here, she'd probably be telling you something slightly different, you know, how she does it. But there's no right way and wrong way. There's just multiple ways. See what I'm writing here. Oh, this is the subject alert. And I did this year for the first time. I set a bunch of subject matter alerts, and I get a whole bunch of emails that are just trash. And I have to delete them because subject matter just isn't that important in the big scheme of things. I want to know when a bill is moving. I want to know when there's a hearing. I want to know when there's a floor vote. I don't care whether it's been assigned a subject. You know, is it abortion or is it aeronautics? I usually know that once I've read the bill. So it's not a real important thing, at least to me. This is just another search feature. So you can say, I want it, you know, to include all of the words or with any of these words or with some exact phrase. You can customize all this stuff. And then over on the right, you can define, you know, whether it's an introduced version a committee report, a roast version, and a roll version, all those different kinds of things. And one other thing, every time you search anything, this right here is really important. That is telling it which legislative session to look in. This one says 86, that was last session, so we are currently in the 87th session. And there will always be an R or an S after that number, meaning R is regular session, S would be special session if one was called. So right now, for everything currently happening, you want to see 87R. But if you want to go back and look up stuff that happened in the 14th and 15th sessions, you could do that. You just have to change that right there. Okay, if you click in the search and put in SB 703, this is the kind of screen you're going to get. So we know this was from the 86th regular session. Its last action was March 1st, 2019. It was referred to state affairs. The caption text, it always says relating to something, and that's supposed to tell you what the bill is about. Sometimes it's quite vague and it's hard to figure out what the bill is about from that description, but it's supposed to tell you. So this one is reporting by local government entities of expenditures for lobbying, providing for a civil penalty. So this has something to do with taxpayer-funded lobbyists. The author was Paul Bettencourt, a co-author was Senator Hall, and the subject matters assigned to this bill are ethics legislature, lobbyists, and ethics commission. It has been assigned, it was assigned to the Senate State Affairs, and this tells you what's happened to it. So it was received on February 7th by the Secretary of Senate. It was filed, read the first time, referred to the State Affairs Committee, and the co-author authorized it. Now, as of the time she screen captured this, nothing else had happened to that bill. If it had been voted out of committee or defeated by the committee or whatever, that would show right down here. If it went to the whole Senate floor for a vote, that would show. Sometimes this list gets huge by the time the bill gets through the process. This one is the committees tab. So these are all different things you can look up about committees. One of the things I love about this tab, and when you put your cursor on the word committees at the top, you'll see a little pull-down menu. It doesn't show here, but it says committees by date. So if I know I'm going to be at the Capitol next Thursday to do something specific, I want to know what else is going on Thursday. And I can click on any date on the calendar in either the House or the Senate, and it tells me every committee that is scheduled for that day. It's very handy, but it's also right here. This is the same thing. So you click on House and a calendar will come up. Let's see if that's the next slide. No, that wasn't the next slide. You click on either the House or Senate and a calendar will come up. You just click on the date you're interested in. One of the things I do usually on the weekend is I look at all of the calendars for the committees for the following week. So I kind of prepare, you know. On Wednesday I need to do this, and on Thursday I need to do that. So you can look up committee meetings by date. You can look them up per committee. Upcoming meetings. The only thing is, most of these committees don't schedule more than a few days out, and frequently it'll only be a 24, 48-hour notice. Now, we know right now that HB 6 that was supposed to have been heard last Thursday and got kiboshed by the Democrats is now going to be heard next Thursday. They just announced that yesterday. That's a really long notice for a committee hearing. It doesn't usually get that good. So if you want to be active with this stuff, you have to also be prepared to act quickly and without very much notice. Under House, these are just all the different things you can look up. And you probably noticed there's different places to look up the same thing. Again, just go and play with it. If you click on House committees, there's the whole list of House committees. If we click on any one of these, maybe it's her next screen. No, that's the Senate. So if you click on, House Administration, it'll give you a list of the members of that committee and who's chair and who's vice chair. And then once you have the list of names, you can click on a name, it'll take you to that person's personal House or Senate website where it has all their contact information. Okay? This one is for the Senate. There are fewer committees in the Senate because there are fewer members. Committees calendars. This is just another place to look up things by date, by chamber of the legislature. Are you starting to get the idea here? It's not going to make sense to you until you go and do it for yourself. I mean, really, just go log on, create an account, and start playing with it. And then I create spreadsheets for the bills that I'm interested in so I can, keep track of as they move through the system. But the TLO, when you set your bill lists and your bill alerts, it produces a nice little thing that you can print out. All right, Sylvia went over all this redistricting stuff. I will just say that it's extremely important and we need to get involved as citizens. The redistricting committee has been holding hearings since 2019, actually. I've attended several in late 2019, early 2020 before COVID shut everything down. So if you see an opportunity to provide input on redistricting, it is important to show up or to make online comments or whatever you can. But we do also know that the census data, which is required before they can actually do any redistricting, has been delayed by the Census Bureau, I think because of COVID. Is there anything in the world that hasn't been affected by COVID? So they're estimating now that won't come out until September, which means redistricting can't get finalized until those numbers come out, which means there's going to have to be a special session to address redistricting, if nothing else. I'm not sure why she put all those maps on there, but since I don't know anything about it, we're going to skip it. Are there any questions about the TLO? Yes.
How are bill numbers assigned, or is there meaning behind the bill numbers? Because to me, it's just like a collection of letters.
It can be both. Usually the lower numbers are reserved for priority bills, priorities from either the governor, the speaker, or the lieutenant governor. So if you see something like a number HB3 or HB2 or SB4, you know that those are priority kinds of issues. So this year, for example, HB3 was the executive overreach bill in the House. HB6 is the election integrity bill in the House. SB7 is the election integrity bill in the Senate. But after that, I think it's just a numerical process as to when they come in. You know, they have until the 60th day of the session to file bills. And they start in November in pre-filing. So whoever filed, in November and December are getting low bill numbers, and the ones that filed on the 59th day are getting a high number. It doesn't really mean anything unless it's a number below 8 or 10.
Follow up to that, is the bill number unique for all of time, or will they reuse the number each session? So if you look at the wrong session, you might see the wrong bill?
Correct.
Yes.
Because I guess on my phone, I looked up SB 703 and I saw a different bill because I think I had the wrong session.
Yes.
Okay.
So in the 87th session, SB 703 is probably something totally different.
Got it, okay.
Now, you could get the same bill numbers. Like SB1 and HB1 are always the finance bills. They reserve those numbers for the budget. Because constitutionally, the only thing the legislature is required to do is pass a budget, and every 10 years redistrict. So the number 1 is always reserved for the budget. But otherwise, if they had the same number, it would mostly be coincidence. Rebecca? An update on the HB3 bill. Okay, this is in the House, the executive overreach bill. The grassroots have done a big push to try to get that bill completely killed. I don't think it's dead, but it has growing pains. There's a lot of people looking at it to try to change it, to make it palatable to the grassroots. I don't know if they can change it that much. There's a very good bill in the Senate that kind of takes care of everything that we wanted, so now we're kind of encouraging Representative Burrows, who filed the bill, to work with Senator Birdwell. And I think Paul and Tamra will have more. Shall we save it for later, Paul?
Just that one real quick. Senate Bill 1025, SJR 45, they are up in committee Wednesday.
Wednesday,
The 31st.
okay.
So
those are the good Senate bills,
Yes.
Senator Birdwell's bills. His bill does everything we've asked them to do, plus it gives standing in court for individuals and legislators, when things go awry. Right now, people have tried to sue in court and they're always told they have no standing. So it corrects that, plus it bans lockdowns and mask mandates and closing churches and all that good stuff. So I talked to someone about this Thursday when I was down there. One of those people who's in a position to know. He's had a lot of conversations with Dustin Burrows. Dustin, I think, wants to please the grassroots, but he also wants to please the governor and leadership, and he's caught, kind of between the two, deciding where his loyalty is. So we need to put pressure on him and make him pay attention to us. But one of the things I think we can do is encourage him to work with Senator Birdwell and get the two of them to come together and find something that works for everybody in both houses. It would strengthen whatever they come up with if they did that. Right now, they're kind of working against each other, which is never a good idea. Did that answer your question, Rebecca? It isn't dead yet, but it isn't, it's not passed out of committee. It's been left pending in committee, so they can still bring it up, and they are working on it. Tom Glass has proposed 8 amendments to that bill that are really good, and he feels like that could make it acceptable. I haven't read all the amendments, so I'm not sure what they are, but I trust Tom Glass. He's a very smart guy. Any other questions about TLO? All right, then we will move on. Our next session is about testifying at a hearing. And Ms. Rebecca Hardy is our guest from Texans for Vaccine Choice. Rebecca is their policy advisor. She spends a lot of time during the sessions in the Capitol, and testifying at hearings is what she does during legislative sessions. So she is going to go over all of that with you. Please welcome Ms. Rebecca.
All right. Do I just Okay. All right, let's testify. Okay, so yes, I'm Rebecca Hardy. I have the honor of being the policy director at Texans for Vaccine Choice, and it really is an honor to be, is this 3 or 4 round? So it's so exciting to see these packed out rooms, because let me tell you, we need more reinforcements in Austin. So my goal today is to kind of lift the veil, if you will, about testifying in committee hearings, but only if you aren't planning to testify in support of vaccine mandates. If you want vaccine mandates, close your ears, because I do not want you to have the keys to the kingdom. I'm kidding, but not really. Okay, so my PowerPoint is not my forte, but hopefully the content will be useful to you. So let's dive in. Okay. I have to click here. Okay, so first thing, always, preparation is literally half the battle. Prepare, prepare, prepare. And I know that Fran will walk through, I believe you're doing the kind of navigating the Capitol portion of the day, but I just like to review, if you've never been to the Capitol, and I'm sure Tim Harden put the fear of God in y'all about how the entire system is set up against the citizen. And I'm here to reinforce that, okay? Parking's a nightmare. Food is a nightmare in that building. It's cold, it's hot, you're never comfortable. There's nowhere to sit. I mean, just be prepared to be there all day. The parking lot, I'm sure you'll review parking. Yeah. Also, you may not get a lunch break when you are sitting in a committee hearing, so bring snacks. Just be aware that you cannot eat or drink in the committee room. You can absolutely step outside to refresh or whatever you need to do, but bring provisions. Make sure you know how to get from, the entrance to your room. I know you're going to talk about how it's only the north entrance that is available to us now, so that's a little bit of a wrinkle in the normal way things are done. You need to prepare to get lost. That building, I've been there a million times and I still get a little turned around. It's confusing, so just know you're going to get turned around and just power through. I always say prepare for your DDP, your devil derailment plan, because I will tell you, without fail, the devil will do his best to make sure that you do not get there to testify. Your kids will get sick, there will be a half day at school, there will be 8 wrecks along the way. I almost didn't get here because the DDP was in complete effect at my home today, so I can testify that this does happen. So if you can just determine in your heart that you are going to be there no matter what, then that's, again, half the battle. And of course, you will prepare your testimony, and I will dive deeper into that in the next, as we go along. Okay, so I'm going to go through the specific processes for both chambers, and then I'll go through the process that's the same regardless of which chamber you're in, okay, because it is a little different. So I'm going to start for the House. I actually would like to start right here and watch this video. The House witness, I don't know, can I click that or do you have to click it?
You can click it, the top button.
Okay.
Should be a pointer. Oh,
Maybe it's the big middle button.
no, it's the top one. It should be the top one.
That advanced the slide.
Point away from the screen, maybe.
Oh, fancy.
And then Rebecca, there's like a little pointer that you can use for a laser. The top
You have to point away from the screen to do the laser.
Okay. Oh, we don't have sound.
You should.
Okay, this is a great site. The House has this really nice site that walks you through where the kiosks are located, and how to access from your mobile device. And this video.
Step 1 is to select the hearing. You have to select the hearing for which you are registering. In step 2,
Well,
tap
the video's
register
not.
to select the agenda item.
Let's.
It's on the other tab.
Oh,
Next, register your position on the agenda item by tapping the appropriate
can you
radio
go to the
button
other tab?
and tap OK.
I don't have control of
Tap
it.
Next
Oh.
to continue to step 3.
Okay, well, let's just close it out if you're able
In
to
step
close
3,
it out for
select
me.
the radio button, indicating whether you represent a group or organization. Depending on your selection, you will be asked to provide additional information.
Okay.
Tap Next. In step 4, enter your contact information. You can save this information to be used again. Enter an email address, create a security question and password, and then click OK.
Can we just get back to?
Tap the
I
next
had to
screen
take
to
the
save your
clicker. I had to give
profile.
myself control.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. I gave the clicker has control.
Next time you register, you can load your saved information.
It's a very helpful video. I'm so sorry, but
Tap Next.
it is available on the House of Representatives website, and it kind of gives you a
Tap the Edit
close.
Contact Information button. Verify your registration, and tap the Acknowledge box. Tap Finish to submit your registration.
All right. Okay. Now, let me go back here.
Okay. Anyway, that website is extremely helpful. There is no Senate equivalent of that, House, the registration website for the Senate. So I wanted to just compliment the House on their very helpful website on witness registration. There are House kiosks where you go to register for the bills. And the House registration is all on the kiosks. And
Do you want to play the video?
no, that's okay. I've just eaten up a lot of my time and I want to be respectful.
Okay.
So the House kiosks are located only in the extension of the Capitol. They are not in the main building, only in the extension. You can use your personal device as long as you are on the grounds and connected to the Capitol Wi-Fi. You can choose to save your information in TLOs to make registration faster the next time. And I will get the video, you kind of overheard it, but you register either for, against, or on. And I will get into that a little bit more as we go. Do you want me to take the clicker back?
Well, it'll give you control back, so do you want that?
Well, I can just say next slide.
Or do you have more videos?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So for the Senate, it's a little bit different. And of course, it's not consistent between committees, so bear with me. So I have 2 bills that are being heard in HHS in the Senate next week, and I brought my committee notice. Oh, thank you. And what's great about the committee notices, at least for HHS, they are very, very helpful. It really lays out what to do if you're doing oral testimony, if you're doing oral and written, if you're doing position only, or if you're doing written only. It lays it out completely in the notice, so it's very helpful. I can't say if all committees are this helpful, so this is my little flow chart that I have created. With the Senate, you should start with a kiosk. If your notice is not as helpful as HHS's, you should start at the kiosk. If your bill is not listed, or it provides the register only option, which means you're not actually speaking, you are only registering, kind of lodging your position, but you want to testify, that means that the committee uses the paper card system, and you kind of need to go, yes, okay, I'm sorry. Talk about the DDP. Did I tell you that everything worked against me to be here today? So bear with me here. So if you want to testify and the testify option is not on the kiosk, you need to fill out the paper card system with the clerk in the Senate committee, with that Senate committee, and turn it in to him or her. Or the kiosk at the Senate, on the Senate side, might provide all 3 options, in that you can register and register to testify as well. Testify means you are providing oral, thank you. I'm sorry. Testify means you are going to speak. Registering means you just want to lodge your position. So, anyway, so all of this procedure is really committee specific and of course confusing, but your best bet is to start with the kiosk on this for the Senate if your committee notice is unclear or is not as helpful as HHS's. Okay, so if your Senate committee is using the paper card system, you can find the cards at the back of the hearing room or with the clerk, and you turn the cards in directly with the clerk. All right, so for both chambers.
No, you have to use the other one to click the, that's just a laser.
Okay, did it go too far? No, okay.
There's a delay, yes. There you go.
Okay, so for both chambers, you have to be on site to register, be it using a kiosk or your own device or the witness card system, and you have to be physically present at the Capitol. Please do not register anyone else. You can only register for yourself. Even if your friend is there with you, they have to register themselves. And do not register your entire family that is sitting at home watching the committee from home. It is illegal, don't do it. Okay, that's my one mean thing I'm gonna say. Okay, when you register, you will register for or against or neutral or on. Neutral or on means you are there to either provide information to the committee. You don't really have any real position one way or another, but that you feel like you have crucial information to provide to the committee regarding the bill. Or you are for the bill with changes. So that's kind of the catch-all if you aren't either strongly for or strongly against. And so to testify means that you plan to speak and not to testify. That's kind of an option on the kiosk when you register. Means you're simply registering your position and then you can stay for the hearing or not. If you plan on providing written testimony, my suggestion is to wait until the hearing starts in order to hand your copies to the clerk directly. If you hand it to the clerk at the beginning of the day and your hearing doesn't start till 6 p.m., there is a higher chance that those papers will get lost in the shuffle. So my recommendation, and I'll probably say it 8 times, is plan to be there all day because you do not know what order the bills will be heard in. Also, as far as written testimony, your committee notice should tell you how many copies to bring. In HHS, it's 20. It is committee specific. And I have all of my materials in packets stapled so that literally all I have to do is walk up, hand my packets to the clerk, and then sit down at the microphone to testify when I'm called up. Okay, so there's 3 levels of hearing participation. There's registering your position only, for, against, or on. Level 2, I see it as registering your position and providing written testimony. And then level 3 would be registering your position and providing oral testimony that usually coincides also with written. I have never testified without also providing that written testimony and supporting documents. All right, so here we go. You're registered. What to expect? A whole lot of hurry up and wait. Be there all day. You really have no idea what order the bills will be heard in. Your committee notice the bills will be listed in numerical order. That does not necessarily dictate the order that they will be heard in. And even if you catch a rumor of what order the bill order that it will be heard, assume it will change, and often at the last minute. Have I mentioned that you need to plan on being there all day? Okay. So there's kind of a difference between a smaller and larger hearing. This is what I would call a smaller hearing in the House. You are called up one at a time to the podium to address the committee on the dais. So now things are a little bit different this session. I know they're kind of leaving every other chair blank because suddenly one chair is 6 feet. Science, and so there are overflow rooms. This week will be my first week to kind of be on site. I have Senate committees, so I don't know exactly how those overflow rooms have worked, but I do imagine that they kind of come and collect the next round of witnesses as they're being, as you are approaching the top of the list, is my suspicion. I suggest that you speak clearly. So if it is a larger hearing, there will be a table set up here with 2 or 3 microphones, and the chair will call 4 witnesses at a time. You might be sandwiched between 2 people that have the opposing position as you, and y'all are just all gonna get up there and be real nice to each other and respectful, because that's what effective advocates do. And so speak very clearly, and so each person will get their 3 minutes, and then you all file out at the same time if it's a larger hearing. Okay, so normally you are called in order that you registered. Not always, it can change. I suggest that while you're waiting, you're very respectful, that you're quiet, that you follow the rules, and that you find your allies and collaborate, or commiserate, as it might be, and it's because you really want to represent your issue well. I know that a lot of people feel very nervous about testifying, and I mean, it can be a very intimidating situation, I get it, but that's completely normal, but there's really no reason to feel nervous or intimidated. For the most part, the lawmakers do want to hear from you and engage in public testimony, even if they disagree with you. All right. So, I have 3 whole slides dedicated to helping you craft your effective testimony. I hope you find this helpful. First thing, you make sure you have read and understand the bill. I know that there are so many amazing grassroots organizations that really do a good job of providing bill analysis, talking points, but at the end of the day, you are responsible for making sure you understand the bill. Your hearing notice will tell you how much time you have to testify. It's usually 2 or 3 minutes. I will tell you those 2 to 3 minutes go by very quickly. So please, prepare. I said 15 copies here, but honestly, if you really need to rely on that committee notice to tell you how many copies to bring. And there is a timer. Respect the timer. Like, do not be the person that goes over and just completely disrespects the committee's time. It will start flashing with 30 seconds left. Don't panic. Just finish what you have to say. It's there to help you, not panic you. And of course, make sure you practiced out loud with a timer. I will tell you, I always have notes, and not just notes. I have my testimony written out word for word. I mean, I would call myself fairly seasoned at this, and I still have my notes because, I mean, those 2 to 3 minutes go by fast, and if you stumble or anything, like, you've lost your big final point at the end because you got off track with a tangent or a squirrel moment that you weren't even planning on. So even if you know what you're going to say, have notes, if not the word-for-word testimony typed out. Okay, this is really important, okay? Your first line of every testimony needs to say this, okay? If you do not say this, the committee chairwoman or chairman will stop you and ask you, and then that eats up your time, and you do not want your time to be eaten up. So, my name is Rebecca Hardy. I'm the policy director at Texans for Vaccine Choice. I'm representing Texans for Vaccine Choice and myself, and I'm speaking for the bill. Okay, I will tell you, only say that you represent an organization if you have their permission to do so, okay? This is very important. I also, if I have the time, I also say this. As I work and tweak my testimony, this may get shortened to thank you for letting me be here today, or thank you for your time. And then it could get shrunk, but I try to work this in just so that they know that I appreciate their work on the committee as well. Okay. Did I press that? Thank you, magic. Okay, so how to give effective testimony. Again, you're going to hand your written testimony to the clerk when you're called up. You need to be logical, truthful, concise, and factual, and provide stats. All at the same time, you have to be relatable and emotionally connect and humanize the truth. They seem very like a hard challenge to fulfill, but I'm telling you, it is possible. Every bill is going to either add to the current law or take something away. And if you have a personal experience on how the current law is, then you can speak directly to the changes being made. It's important to be specific about why the changes a certain bill proposes are either a good idea or a bad idea, or how you, your business, your family would be positively or negatively impacted by the bill, okay? This is really important. I suggest you find one concrete idea about the bill on which to shape your testimony and organize your friends or the rest of your team around all the other ideas, because that way every testimony is meaty, unique, and powerful. If all 20 of your friends get up there and say property taxes are bad, it's not going to, when the bill is 10 pages long, you're going to not be as effective as if you take this part of the bill and really drill down into it and let your 5 other friends really drill down onto the other sections of the bill. That way the committee, I mean, oftentimes if it's a really convoluted issue like, you know, informed consent, which shouldn't be convoluted at all, but it can get sticky to the pro-mandate crowd. So I really suggest you kind of spread your points around, because the last thing the committee wants to hear is 20 people with the same thing being said over and over again. It really dilutes the issue. Okay, practice, preferably with someone who does not know your issue, so that you can see if you make sense to them. And it is, hang on, my notes are out of order. Okay, so it's important to pay attention to the other people who testify on the bill and try not to waste anyone's time by repeating what they said. Sometimes it can be even effective to say, I agree with Susie who said this because of this. And that helps to amplify the message without wasting the committee's time. And that way the committee can also see that there's a lot of people that feel the same way. Obviously, the more specific you can be in your testimony, the better. And also, the legislators can ask you questions, and I really am here to tell you to not panic if that happens. Well done. I have gotten a little off, so just please bear with me. I think I've lost my way. Okay. Anyway, the legislators can ask you questions. I promise you there's no need to panic. Sometimes the legislator, not all questions will be unfriendly. So take a minute, just take a beat to think about what they asked you. And just because a question is being asked does not necessarily mean that the committee member disagrees with you. They could be trying to help you make your point. If something was a little vague, they could be actually throwing you a bone. And it's perfectly acceptable if you get a question that you don't know. It's perfectly acceptable to say, I don't know, or I wasn't prepared to speak on that today. May I follow up with the committee with that information at a later date? And that is completely okay. Just have those responses ready so you don't have a deer in the headlights moment. Okay. And then my final thoughts here is just, you are qualified. I know I will never forget, the first time I testified, it was I remember my whole, basically my whole body, mostly my right leg, just shook the entire time. And it was just like, I can't stop it, and it's shaking, and I'm scared. I'm nervous, obviously, but I'm doing it nervous. So, and now it's just a big old pain because you have to, I don't know if I mentioned that you need to prepare to be there all day. They put the vaccine bills at 10 p.m. all the time. It's really fun. But it's just, do it scared, and then the next time it won't be as big of a deal. So you really can do this. It is not it's painful because you have to be there all day, but it's not painful in that, yes, it'll be nervous. You may be nervous your first time, but then it'll be no problem. TFEC has created this Capital Survival Guide. Kind of walks you through the best bathrooms, the elevators, where to park, all that stuff. I believe that Fran has included it on your resources. And this is your legislature as a Texan, and you have every right to be there and talk to them about the bills in committee. So I thank you, and I hope this was helpful. And I think we have a few minutes for questions. Okay. Yes.
What is the effectiveness? Oh, excuse me. What is the effectiveness of registering your stance versus testifying? Do you ever want to just go to register your stance?
That is a great question. I would say only testify. Okay, repeat the question. She's asking kind of the difference between as far as effectiveness between just registering versus registering and testifying. I would say this. If it's a really hot button issue, say constitutional carry, there's going to be a ton of people there to testify, and that committee hearing is going to last till 5 in the morning. And so it may be just as effective to see, because the committee gets the list of how many numbers register for, register against, how many testify for, testify against. And so in a situation like that, you may not want to stay until 5 in the morning to testify. It would be just as good to say, oh wow, this person drove all the way down here just to sign on to a kiosk. And that is okay too. With these for the issues that the legislators may not be as educated on, I would say vaccine choice qualifies for that. I would not just register and not testify. I know that I have really important information to share. But on some of these other bills that I know that more seasoned and expert advocates are there, I would let them take the reins.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you talked about not being able to eat or drink in these committee meetings. That is correct. But you can step out in the hallway and do that. Do they take a recess for lunch break or dinner or?
Okay, as the question referred to about eating and drinking and lunch breaks. So normally, for instance, many committees start at 10 in the morning, but then they have to adjourn to go to the floor. Either the Senate or the House will have the business, that calendar of the day. When they adjourn the committee in the morning to go do the business on the floor, that is a great time for you to take your lunch break. Also, the committee, if there's no calendar for the general House or general Senate, they may also adjourn for a lunch break. So they also might not. So you just kind of, if you can make friends with somebody on the committee and try to get hey, do you know when there might be a lunch break, or do you know when you would know when they're going to go onto the House floor or the Senate floor, because those calendars are on TLO. But you may not know if they are going to take a lunch break separate from that as a committee. It's a lot of hurry up and guess and figure it out. So if you are in the committee and a committee is going on and it seems like it's going to go on for a while and it's not your bill, I would just step out and take whatever you need to do. So great question. Yes, ma'am.
Is it okay to bring kids with you?
Great question. I would say, so I'm a big believer in, my precious girls are sitting right behind you and they are here today, and I am a big believer in raising your children up to be advocates, and if that means coming along so they can be advocates in training, then that's a great idea. I will say, because you're going to plan on being there all day, you have to figure out for yourself if your kids can manage to be there all day. That's definitely a kid-by-kid decision, and the parents know best on everything. Yes,
so I'm not questioning the effectiveness of testimony, but for instance, like if you live in Carrollton and have a Democratic representative and you talk to a staffer and they're obviously not on your level of which way you want a bill to go, you're going to committee to try and convince these other legislators that this is why you should vote against or for this bill.
Yeah. Right. Just because your personal state rep or state senator might be adamantly against you, it doesn't mean that the committee is. And usually the committee chairs call these bills because they think that these bills might get, this isn't a hard and fast rule because bills die in committee all the time. But, if they're heard in committee, it's a huge potential for that hearing, and the potential committee vote really will catapult that bill into the process. And so then it can be hashed out on the House floor, and your state rep might be a no, but that doesn't mean anything at the committee level. Excellent question. Yes, ma'am.
Will all individuals who register to give testimony be recognized?
I have never heard of a situation where they have just decided to stop calling witnesses. Now, what they may do, I should repeat the question, I'm so sorry. The question was, will everybody that's registered to testify, will they ever just stop calling witnesses because the committee hearing's too long? Is that accurate? I have never heard of that happening. I'm not saying that it wouldn't ever happen, but even with some of these really hot issues, I have seen them go till 5 in the morning like we saw last week. I will say what they may do, and I have seen this, is that while the committee notice might say 3 minutes, as they go throughout the night and throughout the morning, as it might be into the wee hours of the morning, they might make a rule change where testimony gets reduced to 2 minutes or down to 1 minute. So you just have to be ready to pivot if that happens. And I think I'm getting the pat down. All right, thank you so much.
Okay, our next one is back to citizen advocate training, and the section called TGP Citizen Advocates. Keep going. Whoop, too far. Back up. Someone? There we go.
This one?
Yeah, so I'm just going to take a few minutes to tell you how our citizen advocate program works. I'm sorry, I have a terrible tickle in my throat today. Now, you can engage in citizen advocacy by yourself or with other groups. Maybe you're in a Republican club that is going to do this. That's fine. This section is just to tell you how we do it and how we get the information out there for you. So at the beginning of every legislative session, our True Texas Project Board selects legislative priorities. We throw out usually whatever the Republican Party has voted on, and then we might throw out a few more that are hot topics that year to the board, and they vote on them, and so then we prioritize the top ones. And typically we've only done about 3 per year, but this year we did 6. As we decide to advocate for or against a specific piece of legislation, we frequently write position papers on that, because a position paper just, is stating your support or your opposition and why with some backup. And we use those as handouts as we visit legislative offices. It's something to leave behind. It probably goes in the trash, truthfully, but it sometimes gets your point across. So we will have teams of advocates that will travel to Austin to meet with key players, testify at committees, register support at the kiosks, and talk to legislative staff. People who don't go to Austin can write letters and postcards and emails and make phone calls and still, represent our position on that bill. So there's kind of something for everybody. If you can't go to Austin, there are still things to do. We also work closely with other grassroots groups. You're going to hear from one of them called Grassroots Gold here in a few minutes. And other Tea parties and grassroots groups all over Texas. So whenever I send out a message to our citizen advocates, I send to those group leaders as well. So then if they want to, they can send to their people. So, we have multiple groups and multiple people focusing on the same message at the same time. We're scheduling trips about weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, but it all depends on what's going on. We've been down there once a week for the last 4 or 5 weeks. I've lost track. But an email will go out to everybody on the citizen advocate list that announces the date and time and the objective. If you want to participate, you reply back, yes, I want to go. If you don't, that's fine. You don't have to reply back at all. When you can't go on the trip, you can still do the emailing and the phone calling and so forth, and we always ask everybody to be in prayer for our efforts. So there literally is something that everybody can do. We mostly use carpools for these trips. Once in a while, we will rent a van or a bus if we have large numbers. We also have traditionally done a big fun kickoff sort of trip where we rent a bus and we have 50, 55 people going, and we do something fun on the day as well as just introducing people to the Capitol. We've kind of been hampered this year by all of the various things going on, mostly surrounding COVID. So we have not done that yet. All of the fun activities are closed. So I'm still searching for a fun activity that we could do that's open, and I haven't found it yet. But we might still do it. If somebody drives a carpool for us, we will reimburse them up to $60 for expenses. I know that doesn't cover big giant vehicles that, you know, hold 1 million gallons of gas, but for most of us, it pretty well covers that. You are responsible for your own lunch, which you can buy at the Capitol Grill, or you can bring a sack lunch or whatever. We generally do not go off campus for lunches because there just isn't time. For each trip, a trip leader will be assigned. It's generally me if I'm going, but on the times that I don't, I assign that to somebody else, and it's the trip leader's responsibility to make sure everybody stays on task, doesn't get lost, and gets there and back safely. We generally meet up at some convenient location. Usually it's in North Richland Hills, which is just kind of central for most of the counties that we serve. Once in Austin, you might stay together as a group. You might split up into 2s or 3s. We generally don't go in singles because it's just safer to always have a buddy, and it's more fun that way too. We try to provide you as many tools as we can. I have generic business cards we can use where you can fill in your name and your contact name information, but it says True Texas Project at the top. We have our legislative priorities that can always be used as a leave behind, the position papers, and you know, one of your best tools is a smile and a friendly handshake. So don't forget to use that one too. If you go, please share your experiences on social media. It gets other people excited about doing it, and they, you know, maybe I couldn't possibly do that, but my friend that I know, or this person I've seen on Facebook, she's doing it, so I could probably do it too. It's very helpful. If you have a neat experience, you know, send me an email afterwards, and I will share it with the entire group. Take photos when you can, and provide enthusiasm for other people. Rebecca's already covered most of this. Comfortable shoes is my best advice for when going to the Capitol, because you will do a lot of walking and stair climbing. A jacket or a sweater, because frequently the rooms are very cold. Try to dress professionally as much as you can. I don't expect you to go out and buy a new wardrobe to go to Austin, but you know, don't show up in cutoffs and flip-flops either. All right. Real quick on navigating the Capitol. I'm going to reset my timer here so I can keep track of things. It's a big building, and there's the original building with the dome that you've all seen the pictures of, and then there's the Capitol extension, which was added underground. And it's where most of the House offices are. It's where most of the hearings are held. So it can get a little confusing. So in the main original building, you've got the main floor, the ground floor, and then you've got, I don't know why I didn't put that on the slide, because there's also a second, third, and fourth floor. But then you have the extension, or some people call it the annex. This is maps of the main building. And these are all available on the website for the Texas Preservation Board, the Capitol Visitor Center. You can search any one of those things and you'll eventually find these maps. So the main thing I want you to take away from this today is these numbers. So when you see a number like this that starts with a number followed by a letter, that means it's in the main building. 1 means it's on the first floor. W means it's in the west wing. Because you see, every floor has a rotunda, and then it has a north, south, west, and east wing. So that's what that number means. If it's a 2E.3, that means it's second floor, east wing, room number 3. See how that works? The only elevators that go to every floor in the building plus the extension are the north wing elevators, which are right here. And I know there's a pointer, but I don't know how to use it. Right now, the only entrance you can go into the building is through the north entrance. Used to be you could go in any one of the 4, but they've closed that down since COVID and various things. So you can only go in the north. There are other elevators throughout the building, but they don't go to every single floor. The House and Senate galleries are on the 3rd floor, but beware in the main building when we say, like if you're going to climb the stairs to go from the 1st floor to the 3rd floor, that's like climbing 6 flights of stairs because every flight is double. The ceilings are that high. So you go up one whole section, and then you turn and you go up again, and it's literally like 2 flights of stairs for every level. So if you're old like me and the stairs bother you, take that into account before you decide you're going to hike up to the 3rd floor. This is a map of the extension. There are 2 levels in the extension, 1 and 2. They are all below ground. So notice the room numbers now start with the letter E. 1 is level 1, and E2 is level 2, and then that'll be followed by a room number. This all makes a lot more sense when you see it, but I will warn you, I've been there a lot of times, and I still get turned around, especially if I'm down in one of these corridors, and then I come out, and it's like, did you ever stay in a hotel and you come out of your room and you can't remember, am I supposed to go this way or this way? Because it all looks the same. The extension is like that. It all looks the same. But as long as you get yourself to this central area here, and you notice there's 3 open sort of round things. As long as you get to that central corridor and you can look and see, okay, I can tell which way is which now. But as Rebecca said, just prepare to get lost. It's going to happen. And don't let it freak you out. You can print these maps out and take them with you, but you can also pull them up on your phone on the TL or the Preservation Board site. Here's E2. It's the same layout as E1. It's just one level down. Oh, that was that. Okay. Oh no. Here's the parking thing. So mostly we park at the official visitor center parking lot, which is on the corner of 12th and San Jacinto. That would be the blue square right there. And it's just a quick walk then over here to the Capitol. If that one is full, I generally go over to the Bullock Museum, which is on 18th and Congress, I believe it is. And they have a big parking garage, and generally that's where overflow goes. There's numerous public parking areas around the Capitol. You can look those up, but beware because a lot of them are reserved. You'll see parking, but you get there and it's like reserved for state employees, or reserved for this, or reserved for that. So.
Do you have meters? Metered parking?
I'm sorry?
Do you have metered parking?
Metered parking? There might be on the street. I just never parked there. You'd have to be running out putting money. It wouldn't be very effective. One thing I like to tell people is when you're in the rotunda of the Capitol, you can see it from every level. So at the top level, you can see all the way down to the bottom, or vice versa, you can see up to the top. But if you're looking for a room number that's in the east wing and you're standing here in the middle and you have to say, well, which one is the east? I don't know. You see the clock over the door? That's the north wing. The north wing has the clock over the door. And you can see it from any level. You don't have to be on the ground floor to see it. I also found out that the south wing, except on the 4th level, has 3 of this arched doorway. This is the north, but on the south, there's 3 of those arches at every level except the 4th. The south entrance has 3 arches instead of 1. Little inside tips. Okay, moving right along. Our next segment is about effective communication with legislators. And I have asked Paul Hudson and Tamara Colbert with Grassroots Gold. They've started this Grassroots Gold group to help train and help advocates be more effective at the Capitol. But in a former life, they were with Convention of States, Texas, which won that issue in 2017. They got that legislation passed. And I noticed they were just very effective in mobilizing people and getting the message through to the legislatures. They did such a good job with that. I thought it would be good to have them talk to us about how to do that. So please welcome Paul and Tamara from Grassroots Gold. Test. Oh, that's hot mic.
Tamara, what's Grassroots Gold and who are we?
Well, first of all, we have to give a huge round of applause to this woman, because she is tireless in her efforts. We love True Texas. You guys are amazing. They are doing today's current version of missionary work right here in Texas. Please support them any way you can. That means sacrifice that Starbucks $5 and give it to Fran so she can help fund somebody who's going to drive a boatload of advocates to the Capitol. But we love you, Fran. You're doing amazing. And by the way, she does bring a blanket because we were in a State Affairs Committee room that was probably 40 degrees on Thursday. And she had her blanket there, so she definitely knows what she is doing. Hey, you misspelled my name.
That wasn't my slide.
Okay. It's actually Colbert. Colbert without the Cole, C-O-L-E. It's Colbert spelled like Stephen Colbert, but the Texas pronunciation. So Paul and I, we did do something miraculous in the state of Texas. As a quick 10-second aside, we passed legislation in 2 sessions. And from what we understand, according to the Lieutenant Governor, that never happens. And we sat, he invited us to come and chat with him after we passed legislation and in 2017. And we sat in there, and a couple of us in there, he looked at us and said, "Do you guys understand what you did?" And we look at each other.
What did we do?
What? I don't know. What did we do? He said, "You passed legislation that never happens." And he used school choice as a perfect example and said the school choice people have spent $50 million in 20 years and are no closer to passing school choice. And you passed legislation in 2 sessions.
Priority legislation.
Priority, got it. Did it in 1 session, got it on the books, and then the second session, we had the governor make it a priority and then pass in that second session. So we have some tricks and some tips we're going to share with you today. And we have some inside baseball because we were on the phone a short while ago with Chairman Briscoe Kane about the election committee. We're going to share that with you as well.
We put this at the front of our deck because it used to be at the end and we never got to it, but we wanted to say a big thank you to our families and also remind you our website and our Facebook page. But we love our spouses and our families. We get to spend time together now that we've done so many things. We even ended up at Disney World at the same time, which was not the plan. But all that, and again, big thank you to Fran, and I know I told her this morning, trust us, we're going to go a little different this morning, and we actually were modifying the presentation in the back there as we go, because we've learned a ton this week. We've been going to the Capitol for 7 years now. This is a huge learning experience. Everything compressed. Normally the stuff that happens in May is happening in March, which tells you how serious the other side, the left, is on election integrity. Here we go. I want to talk about Ben.
Oh, Ben. We need some Ben right now. We have a republic. Here's the key word: if you can keep it. Not if Donald Trump can keep it, not if Joe Biden can keep it. We have a republic if we, you, me, if we can keep it. And he meant it. I'm going to say, next door, right here in this vault, thank you, Terry, my grandfather's pocket watch is sitting in there. My grandfather was Captain Miles Standish, who came here 400 years ago. My family lived 6 generations without a constitution. They were kind to each other, didn't act a fool and murder, and they didn't need to be all crazy. They wanted to live free and worship freely. And I was thinking about this pocket watch coming in here today. We're running out of time for this republic, and it's not a joke. And so everything, how many, I have a couple questions I want to ask you right now. How many of you have been to the Capitol this session? 4. How many of you are aware of all the legislative priorities that our GOP and the governor and all of that have set are the priorities for this session? Okay, about almost half. How many of you think that Democrats will stop at nothing to permanently rig elections and everything in this nation? Everybody's now raising your hands, so that means if you have that feeling, you have to show up at the Capitol. Because if you're not willing to do that, like Fran has been talking about, you might as well go out that door right now. Because there's 2 types of people in America, and it is doers and talkers. This country was made by doers. The Democrats are doing. Are we going to let them take this country? That's the question.
Another question for you. You've sat through some great training already this morning. What is the next thing you need to do? Great, put it into practice. Boy, the opportunities are here.
Okay, don't it on the way out for you.
Here you go. All right, we're going to cruise. Guess what? We're going to go through just a ton of this as fast as we can.
We're going through all this. Why? Because we're getting to the most important slide. Because all this got thrown out of the window on Thursday at the Capitol.
Well, it didn't get thrown out the window. We're going to compress it all into practical real quick here.
Right here.
So we're going to stop here for a moment and talk about really the 5 things you want to look for, right? It is building relationships. It's huge, building relationships, and that takes time. You're not going to do it in a training class. You have to be on the ground. And Fran was right earlier when she said everything you learn applies not just at the state level or even the federal level, local government. Everything you learn here is going to apply there because it's about building relationships with other groups, with other people in your own liberty groups, with legislators, elected officials, staff, everybody. You never know who's going to be a cog that's going to be really important maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, somebody you met that was in one office and now they're in another office and you have a door that's open to you. Really cool. Communicate. You're the communicator.
Communicate, communicate, communicate. Tell a story. You just heard from Rebecca about making sure that you have a story to tell that's relevant with your testimony. Absolutely true. And I kind of disagree a little bit with Tim, in that if you have the right story, as he did mention, you have the right story, you can sway a legislator or multiple legislators right there in a committee room. And your job is to find the reason right where you're at, your reason for supporting something. Because we can watch every night on the nightly news, and we see the talking points, we hear them. Everybody has the memo. Legislators on that dais, they don't want the memo. They've seen the memos. They actually want to hear from you. You, when you go to a committee room, you are the most important person in that room. Not the chairman, not any of those legislators. They are actually in that room for you. And contrary, it's true, the Capitol, it's wonky, it's kooky, you get lost. 7 years, we get lost. That Capitol belongs to you. You said, my kids have been going to the Capitol, speaking of kids, since they were 7 years old. They walk into that Capitol as though they own it, and they're now 15. I walk into that Capitol, and I'm feeling pretty good. That is my Capitol. I can be anywhere I want in that Capitol, for the most part. Sometimes we have been in places we weren't supposed to go. Secrets. But that's my Capitol. And I'm going to walk in there with attitude that I am more important on any day than anybody else in that Capitol. So are you. So are you. You walk in that Capitol, that's your Capitol. You smile, you say hello, because you know what happens when you do that? Suddenly people start going, who's that? Is that somebody I should know? Seriously, chiefs of staff, staffers, you walk in there like you are Miss America, and they believe you are. So when you go to a committee hearing, whether or not you testifying is good, but you don't want to filibuster your own bill. But there's a lot of ways to communicate with that positive attitude and your ownership of this nation and this republic. And that is sometimes worth more than words.
Amplify your voice. It really follows communicate, because you communicate in many ways, and amplifying your voice. We've got the social media up here, and the emails and the phone calls. You know how those get amplified by all the folks who can't come, and there's a lot of people who just can't make it. But when you have numbers on site, be it locally, right, 20 people at a commissioner's court, huge. You have 500 at the Capitol. Suddenly, all those emails and phone calls that those offices have been getting are real. Right? And I know that sounds strange. They should be real anyway. They become real when your legislation has legs. That's what we say. You put legs behind it. Right? That's a means of communication. Just by being there is telling us, the optics are telling a story. Media advisories, media interviews and advertising. We're going to talk about some media opportunities coming next Thursday, because the media is going to be there next Thursday for HB6, and it's going to be an opportunity to show a contrast. We'll talk about that in a minute. Being relentless and patient, right? Don't give up. You can get discouraged along the way, but you keep moving and being patient. You will be surprised at what you hear in the hallways, in a restroom,
The cafeteria.
in the cafeteria,
Yeah.
and certainly in offices. And sometimes you'll get information in it, and if you get an opportunity to speak with a rep, like we know Representative Chairman Kane now, so that's why we had a conversation with him. You can get things, and maybe your leadership team knows some things that they aren't going to share because there's some strategy going on behind the scenes. I can tell you there is a lot going on behind the scenes on HB6. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes on HB3 as well. I know that was mentioned earlier today. Hopefully good on HB3.
And when we say good, we mean strengthening or killing the bill,
Right,
whichever happens.
one way or the other. By the way, the effect of amplifying the voice was very much on display on HB3 a few weeks ago when there was, every individual who testified on it was against it. Every single one. That speaks volumes, right? Every single individual. I couldn't be there. I'll tell you, testifying virtually is the weirdest experience because you can't see anybody, and it's strange to just talk to a camera. There you go. Golden opportunity coming up.
Golden opportunity. This is a session like no other, truly, like no other. So, I'm just going to say on every Democrat legislator's office, there is a poster. It might as well say, I'm terrified of the corona, because they are. I'm not joking. On every Democrat legislator's office, there is a huge poster that says, this office is closed. If you would like an appointment, we are doing Zoom calls and telephone calls. Please call this number to make your appointment. Just saying. COVID testing, we differ with Fran a little bit on this, but hey, self-governance, baby. You decide for you. For me, I'll do the free COVID test, because then I get to go to Walmart without a mask and say, I already had my test. I'm free. Thank you. So you do what you want to do, right? But it's true. Senate, they are, I think the lieutenant governors get a message. I'm just going to say, I'm hearing some things.
The gallery there looks ridiculous.
Yeah, and we're helping on that.
So I have a question on the COVID testing. I know that some people are gonna do it just for whatever, but what if you are being tagged with nanoparticles and they do that COVID testing at your blood-brain barrier?
Okay, I gotta be totally honest, and if I'm being tagged with nanoparticles, come and get me. Come and take it. You're gonna get me with the nanoparticles, then I am gonna bring some serious conservative thunder into that house until the day those nanoparticles put me in the ground. I really don't care. Because those nanoparticles meet their match with me, is what I'm saying. I'll take nano any day. Let's go. So, showing up, you can send emails, that's great, you can do all that. The single most effective way to make your voice heard, to communicate, is showing up. Last Thursday, I will say, by Friday, by yesterday, there were over 500 citizen advocates, citizen activists that set foot in that Capitol last week. That is a monster win for us, and you know what that does? That puts wind in the sails of our legislators. So golden opportunities, the most golden opportunity is for you to show up, and we're going to talk about that.
You want to be a super spreader? It's time. Be a Liberty super spreader. This coming Thursday, and we got a call about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon because we thought this was going to be put off about a week because of Holy Week. And so we thought this was happening in 2 weeks, but we got the call. Chairman Kane is ready to roll on HB 6, which is election integrity, because it is ground zero, right? The Elections Committee is going to be 8 a.m. on the 1st, Thursday the 1st. Capitol opens at 7. Get there right away. This is ground zero. Want to explain this video real quick?
I'm going to let you just watch it. Okay, this is the battle of our lives. That video was testimony with the Black Lives Matter folks and other folks for the George Floyd testimony that was heard in the Homeland Committee on Thursday. They created all kinds of drama. We knew there was something going on when we were standing and watching 50 DPS officers running top speed down the hall to see what was going on. And they were creating so much drama that the 4 television news cameras that were there were not filming them. That's how crazy it got. Be the contrast for that.
This really is the future of our state and our nation, election integrity. We've heard that. Fran, you've been down on multiple issues this session, but the one that keeps coming back up is election integrity, right? It's pro-life and election integrity. It's constitutional carry and election integrity. It's banning taxpayer-funded lobbying, election integrity, because if we don't have confidence in our elections, nothing else matters. And the activists understand that. They connect the dots and they say, why would I do anything else if my vote doesn't count, right? If my vote's the one that's being suppressed, basically. They're throwing everything they have at this. So the question is, are you ready and willing to say, come and take it to Robert Francis O'Rourke, who was, go ahead.
Hold on, I'm gonna point out. Let's see. There's Bobby Frank right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. See those 4? Those are the 4 Democrats from the Elections Committee hearing. John and Fran both mentioned this morning there was a procedural error in that committee. We were there. You know what happened? Those 4 Democrats, Robert Francis was there to testify. They did the House equivalent of a filibuster. And because the chairman made an error in language, because the parliamentarian took off for lunch without telling anybody. Tell me there's not things happening behind the scenes that are coordinated. Now, disclaimer, don't have any facts, but the minute that House committee was recessed, guess what? Cameras set up, and they go out and they've got a press conference talking about how people like me, I'm a racist because I want to make sure my vote is protected.
Also, Tamara, that's all.
Yeah.
That's all posted on Facebook later in the day, saying that Chairman Kane, the Republican, deliberately shut down that meeting so that Democrats could not testify against voter suppression. I saw the post. That's what he says. It was Democrats that shut that down. It wasn't Republicans.
So how do we know that? Because we had 121 of us registered to testify. 121.
200 on Monday.
200 on Monday in the Senate when the Democrats tagged the bills and shut it down. What we learned in the last 48 hours, election integrity is literally the single hill these people are going to die on this session. You know why? How many of you have heard of H.R. 1 that's happening in the Congress right now? So, literally, Thursday this is happening. President Biden is giving his first press conference ever and mentions that any state in the country that passes election integrity laws is bringing the Jim Crow era back. Folks, don't think for a minute all of this is not pre-planned, pre-coordinated, but you know what? They haven't counted on one thing.
They haven't counted on you and the Texas spirit. Today's March 27th. Anybody know what anniversary this is? Today. Some other folks got canceled 185 years ago. Well, first of all, we need to be going, right? Ronald Reagan said, if not us, do it. If not now, when? The time, you guys have learned, right? It's time to act, right? Time to go into action. Battle of Goliad.
185 years ago today.
They want to.
Fran for planning this event today.
Their plan is just like in Infinity War and Thanos to snap their fingers with by killing election integrity, passing H.R. 1, and to cancel half of the nation. Actually, more than half, because how many of you believe we actually won that election? Everybody. They know they don't have the numbers. They're going to cheat and do whatever they can and use every trick in the book. As I said, they're using tricks they normally use in May, in March, because they are terrified. They know they are outnumbered. What they are not counting on is you. They know how the legislators act. They do not yet know what we're going to do. We're going to go there positive and in force, and I know it is a challenge. We heard from somebody yesterday, or it was Thursday, might as well have been yesterday, when we visited one of the Gun Owners America, right? Those Rachel Malone has those folks fired up. They were there in force till 5 in the morning. 6 a.m. Yesterday. And they knew they weren't testifying till midnight, and they stayed. But we heard from one of them. He said, I was in D.C., basically, I think, on the event on January 6th. Told people he was from Texas. And other folks said, we want Texas to take the lead. On this issue, I know we have a lot of issues where the governor's a problem, the lieutenant governor's a problem, the speaker's a problem, chairman's a problem. They are all on board on this. We are the ones who have to take the lead on this. Now it's our turn to be the ones on election integrity. I know it's tough. I know it's Holy Week. But we've done this before. This.
I cannot read that because my heart becomes full. Man, I feel like I'm preaching today. Holy cow. Thank you, Jesus. Might as well get that out there. And we're going to ask a blessing on everybody in this room to tell 10 people that are inspired for liberty. Americans do hard things. Our country was born because 100 plus people wanted to worship and pray and say the Lord's name and ask for blessings out loud and worship freely. That is, forget what they say about 1619 Project. 1620, baby. My grandfather was here because he wanted to be free, to worship our God and Savior without being persecuted. Period. Whatever religion he wanted.
Amen.
Woo! So, we do hard things. It's in our DNA, exactly like the liberty gene that I am still convinced, and I'm going to ask God about this someday. He wrote a liberty gene in our DNA. Why do you think so many people are 10,000 plus people right now, 7,000 kids in Texas facilities willing to die to get across this border? Are we that bad of a nation? I don't think so. Doers and talkers, they're trying to tell you this is a bad nation. The rest of the world doesn't think so. So are we going to lead? Or are we going to surrender our country without so much as a fight? Not me. Because I'm going to be judged for a lot of things. Hopefully it won't be yelling at my kids too much and that I did something for this nation. Willing to cross a frozen river to kill you in your sleep on Christmas. Totally not kidding, we've done it. Holy Week is this week. Third, Good Friday. How much of a Good Friday is it going to be if no one shows up to committee? Well, you and I will be there, so it'll be Paul and I there. Robert Francis is bragging on social media that he is going to bring an army on Thursday to the committee to shut us down. Are we going to do hard things, or are we going to just give it to him? This is a whole come and take it session. We are blessed. We're blessed because we know the truth. We're blessed because we can be fearless because the Lord, you guys have to know this right now. We talked with Chairman Kane right before we came in here. And we told him, we said, we are praying for you. We are with you. And we are going to bring George Washington's army on Thursday to the Capitol. Maybe not everybody to testify, but we need an army to show up so that when Robert Francis's people show up, they're like, whoa, little outnumbered, somebody get up here. That's what we want.
So I know Fran is ready to move on.
She's getting up
Yes,
count for us
so
right now.
the encouragement here, we need to get in the foxhole in this fight. This is the one we have to get in, and we're going to be there with legislators. The unintended consequence, but it's actually intended because you build a relationship on a battle like this, they will then remember you. You built political capital. Now you want to go talk about emergency powers or property tax. I remember being in a foxhole with you on that one. And by the way, the Republicans are now united around this. One thing that will unify them is when they are attacked as a party, right? We think we are strong now on committee there in the House. We just need numbers. What the Democrats don't expect is the grassroots to show up in support. We have to be the contrast. We talked about that. It's going to be a media circus. You will be provoked if you go there. There are going to be people like you saw in the hallway who are going to want to provoke you. Be like Jackie Robinson was when he broke the color barrier. Do your speaking in committee and play the game proudly and with integrity. Do not be provoked, because that's what they want. The media will show that, and they will not be able to hide when you respond that way. But we need hundreds and hundreds of you there. So we need you folks there, and I'm going to throw the challenge out. Who plans on coming on Thursday? Right now. Hands up.
Hey, awesome.
We're going to invite you after everything is done. We want to go Facebook Live on Grassroots Gold with all of you behind us to encourage the entire state to join you and join us all there on Thursday. Anything else to add real quick?
You guys are the difference makers. You are it. You're the last line for Texas on every issue, whether it's this and every issue that you care about. And this is our republic. But we have to make that choice to be the one to keep it. And for me personally, I resolved, made a pact with my 3 boys, that if liberty is up to the Colbert family, we are standing up and we will be that last line of defense. And I pray each one of you are that excited and have the opportunity. We'll be there Thursday, and we would love to see you. And Thursday is going to be your opportunity to be on site and to put into practice everything Fran and her amazing guest today had an opportunity to share with you. So thank you so much.
Okay, I had decided I was not going to the Capitol this week. Y'all have guilted me into it. Okay, I will be there on Thursday.
Woo!
We will organize a group. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask you, what is the practicality, I mean, on the ground? Where do we meet, how do we?
Okay, yeah, we'll get to all that.
Okay.
Remember I told you before, whenever we do a trip, I send out an email with all of those details.